the Public Safety Committee meeting for January 27th to order, and I'm gonna try to figure out and try to recognize everybody. So one of our committee members is Council at Large Joe McGivern. Also, Council President in Ward 7, Councilor Todd McGee. They're both part of the committee. With us also is Council at Large James Leahy. Ward 3 Councilor Dave Bartley. Council at Large Mike Sullivan. Council at Large Howard Graney. And hang on a second, there might be more. I think that is it for now, but I expect there will be more coming, and we have a number of guests. So if it's all right with everybody, I would like to, I'll entertain a motion that we take up item 1.
Make a motion to move item 1.
Second.
Okay, motion is moved to take item 1, which is introduced by Councilor Bartley. And it is the Property Preservation Group, known as the Property Group, Building Commissioner, Mayor's Office, coming before the City Council's Public Safety Committee and provide an update to the City Council regarding the top 20 list of problem buildings, the efforts of the city to remove these buildings from the list, and an upgrade on the balance of funds in the city's vacant property budget. And I know we have Damon Cody from the group, and I think he's pretty much the leader of the group. Damon, if I gave you a promotion, forgive me. But if I don't know if the mayor is here. I know he's been invited, but I don't see him as of yet. Councilor Bartley, it's your order. I'll let you start, and then I'll refer to Mr. Cody, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the panel, so just a couple quick things, Mr. Chair, if I may. Jeff did work with the mayor, and the mayor so designated the building commissioner to be in his shoes at this point. So I just want to raise that. So
thank you.
So the mayor did respond to Jeff. Second of all, we did have a very detailed meeting, though I think I might have given Crystal short shrift on Monday. It was at the back end of what turned out to be a 4-hour and 35-minute meeting. And we discussed something similar to this, which is one of my favorite topics that we have, kind of a recurring topic in DGR, where we hear about the receivership program, and we spoke about how it started and the progress made. So that was very helpful, and a lot of that is funneled. All of that is funneled through the Property Preservation Group, which is what I believe is called now, but I think it was formerly known as a Problem Property Group. That's why I wrote that the way I did, but I'll stand corrected if need be. And then lastly, my last point, Mr. Chairman, is that when the building commissioner was before us, and I don't remember the committee meeting, but it doesn't matter. And maybe Councilor Sullivan can help me out with it, but there was a top 20 list that the building commissioner, I don't have that list, but I want to say it was in Joe's committee, but I'm blanking it right this minute. And it was talking about the ones that are, I mean, there are dozens, if not scores of buildings and lots that are, that go through the Property Preservation Group. But I wanted to hear what progress is being made relative to the so-called top 20. And I hope Damien could give us maybe a 5 or 6 minute presentation and okay. Tell us, maybe at some point, if we don't have a communication, maybe generate the list for us so that we're all working from the same page. And that's solely it. That was a sole intent, just to get an update. So here's some progress similar to what we do with the receivership program, Mr. Chair.
No, I appreciate that, Councilor Bartley, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. I think we need to make sure we keep track. So, Mr. Cody, if you don't mind, Damien, I'm going to have you let us know. I know I had a list at one time, and it had about, I think it was 58 or 60 buildings, and then I got another list that was more prioritized with about 10 or 12. But if you can talk about where we're at, what we're looking at, which ones are really in tough shape, and give us our top 20 type of list and what we expect to happen, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. Just first, just to touch on Dave's comments, yeah, the problem property group was what we called it for years. And the group collectively, we had one meeting where we wanted to change that because it just, it's got more of a negative, negative thing for it. So it became the problem, I'm sorry, the property preservation group, which is really the goal overall, is to preserve whether it's a good lot of land or a building that's larger in need of some kind of development. So not to make it sound like we're trying to, demolish all these. So the 20 was just somebody asked for that, and that's what came with 20. The list is about 58 to 65, somewhere in that range, and it's very fluid. I was looking at it today, and I got asked the fire department to update a few numbers because, for instance, one as an update, 394 High Street was on there, and that was the building that we took down on High Street that was damaged from the collapse of 400 High Street. So that's one we did in-house, and I guess you could call it a success. So it's taken care of. But to go through, I could run through the list really quickly to touch on some of these. I know it's a long meeting, so I'll go fast.
Okay.
146 Brown is the top of our list, and 16 Commercial right after it. They're both owned by the same entity. They owe a lot in taxes, which makes them, they're both problematic properties. The movement on those is really going to require probably a lot of help in the law department and maybe the building department. Time-consuming work, I think. And as a reminder, 146 is the old laundromat, so it's got some contamination. So we're not honestly investing a lot of time, I think, in those because they're complicated. After that is
Did you say they're both owned by the same person or the same business?
Yes, they were owned by Danny Knapp Sr. and who passed away, and I think after that it gets complicated. So, yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Could I?
Yes.
as we're going down the list, do you mind if I just ask Damien a question one at a time so we're not bouncing back and forth?
I'm Damien, you okay with that? I'm fine.
Oh
with
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Okay.
I just don't want to be long-winded.
We'll let you take deep breaths while he asks.
Damien, on the 146 Brown, is it possible for the city through any of the funds we have, the monies we have set aside from the fines or anything or other things to do our own 21E or something on that property ahead of time to determine how bad actually it is? Because if we get involved in a city demolition or if we're putting it out to market, knowing those chemicals that were used in that building, is that something that we could legally do as an emergency under your emergency powers or something, or would we want to think about something like that?
Yeah, and I agree. I think it was probably about a year ago where I brought that up, that I forget the details, but we did have some initial investment into that. I forget how far we got, asked if we could just go take some soil samples, things like that. But part of it is it's on 3 lots. And so the house is on one lot, there's a garage on another lot. Part of the commercial building is on the lot with the house. So that's part of the complication, is it's not, and one of the lots is owned by a different entity than the other 2. And none of those people are around. So it's not just that it's contaminated, but I think there's some other issues in there. So we're trying to figure out what to do with it. And it owes over 100,000 on the house. I forget how much the business has, and the garage doesn't have much owed, relatively.
Yeah, I'm just afraid of the for those on the committee that don't know, the chemicals that were used back in those days in the dry cleaning business are all now known carcinogens. So it's something, one way or another, I think we're going to have to take action on. The other person that Damien referred to that was involved was a Dan McMahon, who is also now deceased. So this one's a real really problematic, but I think we need to start taking at least some soil testing action to see how bad a problem it really is, and what kind of actions and what kind of money we're going to have to spend, or somebody's going to have to spend in the future here.
Okay. Councilor
Mr.
Bartley.
Chairman,
Councilor Graney, I'll get you right after Councilor Bartley.
Oh, I'll wait for Council Graney.
Okay, Councilor Graney.
But just quickly, I just want to know, is anybody living in the house or is it vacant?
Oh, it's definitely vacant. It's last we checked, it was filled with just household goods. It was used like a packed with storage, and along with the building as well. So not too long ago, but before I think the last gentleman involved was deceased, I did meet with a couple of folks on site, and the building is collapsing in on itself. But they've been in and out of there prior. This is before taking stuff, putting it in, taking it out. But nobody's
you.
living there.
I'll say Councilor Graney.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, I just want to briefly add some insight to this. Yeah, Mr. Knapp, who passed away, a lifelong friend of my dad's, former alderman of the city of Holyoke, by the way, and his son was a former member of the school committee. He passed away. His grandson and granddaughter reside in Florida. However, they are represented locally by a friend of the family and a local realtor. And I'm going to email Damien tomorrow with that contact intel. And that may, in fact, spur some, at least spur a dialogue. I don't want to say the gentleman's name on camera, but I know that young Danny is represented by the realtor, and the realtor is Holyoke based, and he's an established realtor with a good reputation. Just relative to 146 Brown, Mike Sullivan and I talked about this a few occasions. It's a former Boschbach's Laundry, and it doesn't shock me that it's owned so much. There are butters on either side that actually give a darn about their property. They take great care of it. It's really a desirable location, in particular because of the view, because of the vacant lot. It's a nice, really nice location, and the neighborhood right there, pretty good. And so we're hopeful, based upon those elements, that maybe we could spur. I just thought of this now. That's why I'm glad actually. Well, I was glad I filed the order anyhow, but now I'm really glad. So if you're acceptable to that, Damien, I will forward to you the aforesaid gentleman's name, number, and email. Hopefully I'll do it tonight, but if not, then I'll do it tomorrow morning. And I'll let you take it from there. And then when we refile this order in 6 or 12 months, perhaps we can get a happier story. Thank you.
Okay. And if I can just offer, just so you know, about a year ago, the demolition cost at 146 Brown Avenue was $161,400, and at 16 Commercial Street was $250,000. So, and I'm assuming with a little bit of inflation, that's probably a little more expensive now, Damien, but somewhere in that ballpark, I would assume.
Yeah, and remember 146 is just a house.
Yeah.
That doesn't include the commercial building in the back.
Okay.
And that price also, Mr. Chair, would not include soil remediation
Right.
or any other hidden
Right.
things that you turn up. That's why I think it's important that we get this done. So we can find out what we're.
And never mind, I know we're not in a round table here, but never mind that, Mr. Chair, but the dumping down the back, that's something that I see the health inspector is here now, the chairman of the Board of Health. So there's a lot of dumping back there as well.
Counselor, I just wanted to know, I've been in touch with the attorney who represents sort of all the dealings with this, as well as 16 Commercial Street. We have an open dialogue as to, as things are progressing, what the family's doing. We sort of keep in touch every couple months for an update. It sounds like they're attempting to sell. They've had some offers on Commercial Street, not so much on Brown, but we do have an open dialogue on that.
Do you want to say the attorney's name, or do you want to just email me?
You can email,
Yeah, why don't you just email me the attorney's name if you would?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Burns. Damien, you're back up.
Sure. So I think I said 345 Dwight Street. So that's been on the list for a very long time. I think that's otherwise known as the Silvio Conti building, if some of you know by name rather than address. They've gone back and forth on taxes. Last year, I think they were all on the up, and they've paid all the vacant registration fees, and everything else and the fines. And now it's, I think, going in arrears again. But it's a large commercial building, so it can't be gone through the receivership process. We're working on it. It's just enforcement. After that, 174 Lyman, it was on the list. It's on the list still higher. We have to update some of these. That was, a receiver was appointed. So you might have heard about that if there was an update on receiverships, but they're just in the beginning of the work. After that, we have 115 Newton, which is city-owned. That's a problematic one that's going to require a very unique application. It's on that street. They're in groups 3 mostly, and 115 is ours that we own, but it's the third in a row where it's collapsing, and the only thing separating it from the one that's occupied next door is plaster walls, because it doesn't, they're not separate. They were built sort of like a 3-family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something we're gonna, I'm not sure, it might be that we're on the hook for buying the 3 of them and getting people out of the other 2, or finding a way to repair a house that has some substantial brickwork that it needs. Funding is something that will be needed for that in either case.
Okay.
394 High, it was next on the list, and that's also the one that was recent. I'm sorry, did I already get past that? I started with that. Okay, because it was done. 281 Main Street. I have a question mark here for myself. That's next on the list. Maybe either Crystal or Sean can tell me where, or tell the group what that is. 281 Main Street. I know the building, I can picture it. I just don't remember where it's at.
Damien, 281 Main Street is right near the corner of Spring. It's where the Kaye building is. It's the next one in. It's a mixed-use building, and it's actually kind of like gap teeth. So there's the Kaye building, there's a vacant lot. There's 281 Main, there's a vacant lot, and then 289 is there. So it's right on that that corner.
So this is near Familia, right? This is where, near Betty Lichtenstein's organization. It's only like two blocks away, right?
Correct. Yeah.
There's like
it's across the street from the city-owned parking lot that abuts the racing mart.
Okay.
I think the Kaye Schulter Club's on the corner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and just because Sean mentioned it, 289 is also on our list, about 10 down from 281. They're not the same owner. They have one lot in between the 2 of them.
Yep.
I have a question mark for both of those. I'm not sure if we've got them in court, or I don't think there are any receivership for either of those 2, but I'm not sure.
Are they owned by different people though?
They are.
Yeah.
So there's an inspection at 289 Main Street that's actually taking place Friday of this week. There's a new owner there, and we met him on site recently. He was still trying to gain full access to the building. He didn't have all the keys, but that was recently sold. The previous owner sort of was not very interested in dealing with that new property. The new owner seems a lot more motivated. So we're doing a comprehensive inspection, and they're going to put some plans together. 283, that one has not yet. We haven't gained access. The owner lives in Long Island, if I'm not mistaken, and he is notoriously hard to get a hold of.
281, right?
281.
Yep. So we're working on those. They're not in a state of this far down the list for a lot of these. It's not like they're in immediate danger to the public. Keep in mind that the ratings that were given also included economic impact, and so safety first, of course. Yep. But if we were looking at a more comprehensive picture, is where are these located? What are they really? And again, so this is an area that was identified as kind of harsh. If nothing else on that, 144 High is next on our list. Unfortunately, so that went out to bid at some point. RFP was sold. This through economic development had a viable person who went through their necessary process. The building deteriorated more, and they backed away. That was very recent, probably a month ago. And now it's back in the city's possession. It's a small storefront with a living space above, but the rear of the building is sort of gone, the alley side. So you don't see it from the front. It looks good, but the back is
What
And
number
that's
high was that?
144. It used to be a frame shop on the bottom floor. So that's one where it's on the line of either we're going to have to fund to remove the building or again, repair it only for the reason that it's sandwiched between two others and maybe we don't want to lose that. After that, 106 Pine is, we are actually demoing that soon in-house. It's next to Sexton Roofing's company, one in on the corner. And it's just waiting. We're trying to work it out. The neighbor who's owns the apartment building, because the overhang on the apartment building is utilizing the 106 Pine Street for support. So just one last thing to get out of the way, and our
So
guys.
you would think by spring that may be gone?
I think so. It's in the queues, meaning, you know, next couple months. It's just as fast. And our demolition guy went on vacation this week, but right before he went on vacation, he met with the owners down there to go over some details, try and work something out.
Okay, can
So
I second, Councilor Bartley?
Yeah,
you have a
thank
question?
you. I just want to interject. I'm very grateful to hear that, Damien. That is some of the best news I heard all day. And the reason being is Mr. Sexton is runs a really nice business. He's just been a friend of mine for a long time, and a really good friends of mine for a very long time. And he's you know, just very concerned about, you know, the ongoings there. And so I'll leave it at that. So that's just that's a very, very positive news. My fear, though, and it's not a fear. I just want to make sure that you're sure that it's my understanding that there might be squatters in there, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say we need to, you know, triple check that and board it up and do what you have to do to make it secure prior to anything, because I just think there's some really illicit activity that goes on at that address.
Councilor Bartley, we did have that reboarded just about a month ago. We had someone go down there and check the property as much as there's some structural damage inside. So it was checked as much as possible and resecured, but there is regular break-ins to that back hatchway area of the property. It's been a problem for a while.
Yeah, Sean, I'm glad to hear that. I was not advised. I haven't been there since probably on that block since August. So I'll speak to the aforesaid gentleman. I'll see what he's but he's there every single day, and so I know he'd be grateful to get rid of that toothache. Thank you.
Okay. Damien, back to you.
Sure. And, you know, and just to follow up on that, you know, that's one of the things, like, so Mr. Sexton, I know him very well because, you know, he does a lot of permitting and he brings the information to us, says, hey, we got a problem. And that's some of the stuff that bumps these things up on the list, is that we're called down there a lot. You know, we're spending money to board up something. He did point out a lot of folks were down there. A lot of dumping has happened. It's gone on for years. Before we owned it, it was, you know, back on taxes, close to around 100,000. And it was just that was our last resort. And we did try to market it through economic development with no hope, no interest whatsoever. So that's kind of the process we've been following. So he is a great neighbor, good business. And I think it has a potential that there's at least two buildings abutting that where we can get the lot over to them. And I think they could utilize it. So
I also want to take a moment to just recognize Councilor Bacon has joined us.
Yeah, that's even a bigger win, Damien, than what I was anticipating. So I'm glad to hear that. That's very good news.
Okay. Down from there, we have some of these. They haven't been updated. I just jotted them down quick. They haven't been updated for the progress that's been made. We have 64 Main Street. It did have a wall in the back that was down, but that wall's been repaired. They have it's private owned. It was a problem for many, many years, over 10, and they've been rehabbing it with a rehab plan slowly, but they're doing it. 246 Lyman Street is the little house that's close to Pizza de Action. as a reference point, it's the one we found a whole lot of money in, and there, that's all said and done, and now we're stuck with the house. One Holyoke development has it. I think they took it under some sort of receivership or agreement to demolish it. I have no update as to why it hasn't been demolished in the last year. If you want to know, I think either Crystal or Sean might know, but otherwise I can keep going.
Anybody know, or?
They were waiting on grant funding, and so they actually obtained a grant to assist with that. That was just in court to basically get a reapproval from the court that they could demolish. So that should be happening. I mean, pending weather and that sort of situation.
Thank you, Attorney Burns. Thanks, Damien.
Yep. 690 Dwight Street is after that. Probably doesn't need to be as high. It was next to the post office, and it had a fire, if you remember, in a corner of the building, sort of disintegrated, but it was a good amount of damage. It went to receivership, and the receivership was dissolved through court, and the owner took it back, and has done some work on the building. They've done a considerable amount of work on the building, but they've got a lot more to go. They're on a rehab. Well, they're going to have to do a rehab plan right now. They're appealing the vacant building registration. So that's I think
that looks like it's going to be rehab, but probably we're talking probably 2022. I mean, I know I've been going by there, and I see a little progress here, a little progress there, but it's certainly nowhere near completion.
Some of the progress is a little hard to notice. There's all new windows in there,
Yep.
and they put new electrical services in the back. They've done work on the porches. So there is a substantial progress that's made, but it's not always visible. Sometimes it's easy to miss, but it is coming along.
Okay, thank you.
moving. So we're not really going after them. It's because it's moving at some speed anyway. 588 High Street is next to the fire station. That is on the top of our in-house. I'm sorry, was on the top of our list, and we decided to utilize block grant money for that, so that we have sort of a parallel thing going on, our own in-house work. So we put it out, and we got an extremely good price for under $100,000 to demolish it. That's American Environmental. That should be happening.
That's the one on Hampshire and High.
I don't know the cross street. It's right next to the fire station.
Okay.
Yeah, they used to use it for training.
It is Hampshire.
Okay.
Thank you. And so that should be coming anytime. But with block grant money, it's Alicia Zoller has to finalize the paperwork. But we talked about it at our last meeting. 84 Newton is after that. 84 Newton is a portion of a larger building. Gentleman lives in, I think it was Florida, has over $100,000 in taxes. It's we've evaluated a few times. It's gonna be one of the tricky properties to take down if we have to. The back of the building's kind of peeling away a little bit. Not an absolute emergency right now, but something we're gonna have to find funding for. So 289 Main was after that. We already talked about it. 274 High Street is right next to the City Hall. That's been on the list for as far as I can remember. If you don't know it, it's the large building that's kind of right next to the annex as well.
The Prue building.
Yes, that's right. The Prue building. I should say the names.
Damien, that one's eight stories.
I think so, 8 or 9, depending.
Yeah, it's up there. At least 7. It might be 8 or 9. Yeah.
What's that address, Damien?
It's I wrote down 274, but I thought it was 276. It's one or the other.
Okay, thank you.
And that's something that's bounced around from one owner to the other, and somebody else got it. They haven't, I'm not sure, maybe Sean knows, I would assume it's on the vacant building registration list, but they didn't, I know that's not on our appeals for next week. So either they paid or we didn't get them.
We haven't gotten anything. We haven't heard from anybody at that property in a long time.
Right.
Damien, how's the roof
Different.
on that property?
How's the what?
The roof.
The roof. I don't know. The last time I walked through it was many years ago. And I went from bottom to top, and just to look at the interior, it's basically just emptied out of all structure. It has, it has the structure, it's the bones on most of the floors. The lower floor is what you can see on the inside, but I don't remember. Actually, I take that back. I did go on the roof and they did some repairs around the edge. It was very lousy work. And we that's where it left off. They just did the edge. They didn't do the whole body of the roof, but the overhangs.
Yep.
Yeah, so we have a problem with the water coming down around the annex side.
When they had the Red Cat Cafe was trying to make a go downstairs, the work that was being done wasn't the roof, and the roof leaked so bad it did a lot of damage on the inside and forced the renter, the Red Cat Cafe, out of there. And then that's 2 owners ago, but the roof was always the problem. But if you look at that overhang, there's holes in it as you're walking through the Korean Plaza. And I just hope that's shored up, because if pieces of that ever came down, we're going to lose someone.
If I can just offer a comment on that, I did actually, Damien and I did talk about that, and he did check it out. So, and at that point we were still okay. So, I mean, we may want to check it again, Damien.
Yeah, I have the worst memory. So you say these things, I think about them. So there was a contractor.
We brought it to you in October. So I know you did check it out, and you told me it looked like it was still pretty good. So.
Yeah, and it does need to keep an eye on. We need to keep an eye on it. It's a problem. But that's why it's on our list. It's such a big building. I think I'm not sure what we could really do enforcement wise. I mean, we could absolutely take it for taxes, but then what are we doing with that giant building?
Yeah. Councilman Bartley, Councilman McGill, you all
It's a lot
set?
of history, but it's also got a dance studio, a dance ballroom in the middle of it. It's an incredible building with history, but be ashamed to lose it, but it'd be ashamed if someone ever got hurt too.
Yeah, absolutely. Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, the last thing I want to do is lose that building. So what's our? I wasn't really clear on what our thinking is so far on that property. I just want to get something a little more clear from you, if I could.
In the past, what we were doing, and keep in mind, we change our priorities month to month depending on what the group sort of decides. But one thing we've done in the past is go after them for enforcement, and that's give us a rehab plan. You don't give us the rehab plan per the ordinance, we're going to give you fines. And we were working that angle for a while at the time, and also having them register it as vacant, which has gone on for years. I'm not sure if they've ever paid that. There was partners in the business. They sold it off to one of the partners, I believe. It was kind of this strange, hard to track arrangement between the partners. And now we probably need to pick it up again. They did hire somebody to do a repair. It was Eric Taub as his contracting company that did the repair on the roof, but it was a very small patchwork job of a bigger problem. So it got through that one part. So that's it. I mean, we need to decide. Again, it's a large building. I don't think a receivership would ever work on a building like that, because it would take a lot of resources, and we could take it for taxes. But I think our only real angle is to keep after it with code enforcement to disincentivize them sitting on it.
So receivership is for residential.
Right, but I think that if you had the potential for residential, we could get creative, but 8 stories of residential would take somebody with a tremendous, bank roll and will.
So is it structurally sound?
I don't think there's any issue with the structure. It's got steel frame. I even went in the ballroom and everything looks solid. I mean, there's definitely some loose brick issues. It's on the side with is it Reels Rentals? Am I thinking of the right building? There's a rental place next door.
Yeah, real.
Yeah, and not like the whole building, but it is deteriorating. It's like many of the larger buildings. It needs repointing of brick. It needs some work.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Damien.
You're welcome. Damien, you're back on. We're keeping you busy, Damien.
Yeah, and there's only like 2 more maybe. I would equate the 276 high is very similar to 400 high when we had that problem. So 163 Sergeants the Armory, that's been on our list. I don't it's not a structurally unsafe property at this point, but when we talked about it in another meeting, I know.
Yep.
So it's just on the list because of its locale again. So, you know, we take the structural elements or the safety element out of it, it kind of gets out of my realm. And it's what the economic development or city as a whole wants to do with it.
Yeah, and that was my concern with that, is that the estimate we got to just shore it up on the inside before we got a developer to come in was about 650,000. I think that's what the estimate was. So that was my concern on that we're going to spend that, and then we still don't know we're going to have a developer. Okay, any other buildings, Damon, you want to talk about, or is it possible to maybe send an updated list of these and any other properties that you think should be in front of the city council so that we're aware of them, maybe either at the next city council meeting or the one after that? Just send us a summary of those, and then all the councilors can have that.
Give you whatever you want. Yeah, I mean, you want the top 20 or 25 or 30, whatever. You know, it's just on an Excel sheet.
Yep.
It's got a lot more information that you'd probably ever want in lots of columns, but I usually give people the first 5 columns. So in the last one on the list, if it matters, it's 480 High Street, and that's a collection of buildings, really. It's 480, 468, I think, and 490. It's all the Halpern building, which everyone's familiar with. So again, down that far on the list, we're not really actively working on them as a priority.
Council Bartley, sure, where is the top 25? Would that be all right with you if we got to report a top 25?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to make this a whole research project for Damien. He's got enough on his plate, but if the committee wants to, first of all, this is complied with. It was a great discussion, so thank you. In my opinion, it's complied with. And then top 20, top 25, I mean, address, current owner, taxes owed, and then we'll know what the list is. And when we bring this around in a year or whenever, whoever wants to refile this order down the road, they can do that, and just kind of get some updates. But I'm going to get to work on the properties I referenced. I look forward to hearing from Attorney Barnes, and I'm going to talk to the realtor myself tomorrow, and at least maybe on Brown and commercial, maybe we get some traction, do something about it. I hope we can get some traction on the Conti building, because we have the gentleman, as you know, in DGR and full city council. We just conveyed the Hotel Jess to Mr. Whitman. So, I mean, that's a really exciting plan, what he has. And I mean, that's directly across the street from the Silvio Conti. I mean, what a legendary name that is. And to have his name on a building like that's kind of a downer. So hopefully between a lot of us and people listening, maybe we can, one last thing, Damien, if somebody wants to, because I think this is probably true. If somebody wants to reach out to you or just to the preservation group, what's the best way to do that? Just add to the list or something, or just to bring something to your attention.
I think, letting me, Sean, Crystal, any of us know works. I'm not really the leader as much as I just administratively would put together the agenda and kind of, host would be the best way to put it. So it's anyone, all of us have the access to manipulate the sheet. It's a Google sheet. So anybody works.
So when you send the communication about the top 25, can you just jot down the committee member's name in the preservation group, please?
Yeah, I'll just, it's an open meeting for people to participate, but I'll give you who's invited. The list of who's invited is a lot longer than who the regulars are. So, maybe.
Well, I guess I'd be really interested in the regulars.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Councilor Sullivan? Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, just a couple of observations. The first one is, just to keep it in front of the whole group in the committee, and especially Damien, to make you aware. I know that we've got some pledges from Wind Development about the Hart Wool building. I think the address is 415 Appleton. It's right below the police station. I went through it this summer, and the roof is deteriorating and the inside is deteriorating at a much more rapid rate Then they realized they went in there with some people, but all they did was go with a drone. And there's one section where you can see right from the basement up through the four stories right up to this. This thing's on its way down. I've mentioned this before. There's transformer. I know, Damien, I think you gave me an update, but these transformers are still hanging on the outside of the building. They more than likely contain PCBs. If any section of that building goes, those transformers are going to go in the canal. Going by it today now, I've noticed that the mortar has now, because of the moisture getting in there, anybody that looks at that from the canal side now, you can see the white stains all over the side of the building, and that is the mortar leaching out of the brick out of the masonry. Myself, I'm cautioning everybody probably for the 5th or 6th time. By the time it's gone too far, wind has waited too long, this building is going to be the next Essex House. You can see large sections of the roof on the tracks by the police station, next to the police station parking lot. We've got to get an ultimatum to win, right? I don't want myself for them if they've got to cobble tax credits, all this other stuff that they're doing and waiting on. It's going to be too late. If they really want it, they've got to take some action yesterday to stabilize this building, or it's going to be our next disaster. And then as far as what we're facing as a city, all this about, adding fines and letting people get further and further behind on the back taxes, all it does is psychologically make it look even worse to the public and to the council and to everybody else involved. It's a number that's never going to be paid by most of these days. So all of a sudden we're saying we're writing off a number. We're just adding up a burden that's never going to be collected. The real problem, and we've requested this from the mayor, I know we've sent requesting and we have not got an answer back yet, to do some bonding for an accelerated demolition program. And I just wanted to remind everybody about that. That in the long term, especially when we're talking about 8-story buildings on High Street next to City Hall. I hope everybody remembers the Essex House. That's all I got to say.
Okay. No, thank you, Councilor Sullivan. So I think we got everybody that wanted to. So Damien, if it's possible to send a breakdown to the committee, plus if you could do the top 20 properties. And I know what you did for me one time. You sent me a note with the address, demolition cost, potential demolition cost, a note saying what was the issue with the building, whether it was owned by the city or owned privately. And Councilor Bartley would also like to know if they owe taxes. So if we can do those 5 things in a report for top 20 buildings, that would be great.
Yep, I got it. Send it to Councilor Bartley.
Why don't you send it to the full city council if that's okay?
Oh, that's okay. Okay.
Okay.
Send it to Jeff.
Okay.
So I also want to make a point that Chief Preskopowski, who was also on the building committee, indicated he could not make it. He had he was hoping he was going to get here in time, but I don't think he's arrived. And if he has, I apologize. But I wanted to let you know that he did indicate he was going to try to get here, but he had a commitment. He would try to get here as soon as possible. So, Sean, Mr. our Health Director, Gonzalez.
Yeah, I just want to say that HG&E will be removing the transformers from the property Councilor Sullivan was referencing. So while the building itself is still, I agree, a hazard, the transformers, in the case of a disaster, will not be inside of it.
Thank you, Sean. Jeff, we are from the G&E. I'm fine.
Yeah, I just want to update to that. We did remove those transformers as of yesterday, so they are off the building.
Okay. See what the timing we get here, Councilor Sullivan?
I know, it's perfect.
Yep.
I haven't seen Councilor Sullivan smile that much in weeks.
I've never seen him smile, so.
I'm
Just kidding. Just kidding. So I'll entertain a motion that the order has been
complied with.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Damien. And Sean, if you could hang in here for the next one, I'd appreciate it.
Thank
All
you.
right, second item, I didn't take a motion to
Thanks,
take up item 2. Damien, I think you're
Second.
all set, right? Thank you, Damien. I entertain a motion to take up item 2.
So move.
Second,
All in favor? Aye.
Right.
Item 2 is introduced by Councilor Anderson-Burgos. Order that the city council form a volunteer commission to study and recommend solutions to comprehensively address panhandling in the city of Holyoke. Members of the commission should have a range of backgrounds and expertise related to various concerns and contributors to panhandling. These should include, but not be limited to, public safety, public health, employment, and education. I want to also say I'm very pleased that Jeff Hayden from Holyoke Community College has joined us to be part of this discussion. We have Sean Gonzalez, the health director, and maybe others. And if there are, please forgive me if I'm not getting you down there. Sergeant Hart is here, and I know he has always been able to talk about what happens with the opioid task force down on Ray Street, the community policing. So, and Juan is here, Councilor Anderson-Burgos. I'm gonna turn it over to you for right now.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. As you already know, this has been an ongoing issue even before I got elected. And I think it's time that we start thinking outside the box. It's a continuous problem throughout the city. And I know for sure that the city is not unique and it's not the only city that has the same problem. What I want to start doing is bringing different departments together, figuring out a way, look to see how other communities that had this issue, how they addressed it, and you know, see if we can basically copy what they've done. And I know it starts with education, understanding, taking an educational approach, figuring out what we can do. And that is why it's important, like members of Board of Health, nurses, people who've actually been, you know, I'm not going to say people who've actually been homeless. So basically, these are the people that we all need. We need to bring all these people to the table so that we can figure out how we can help one another.
Thank you.
So if it's okay through you to Sean and see if he has any ideas, this is right now is a good time to just brainstorm and talk about different approaches or what you've heard from other either other communities, so on and so forth.
Before we go to Sean, I'm just going, if I
Sure.
can make just one point in it, and I've been, and Sean, I sent you an invitation to be part of a program that we are going to try to do something with Channel 15, trying to really emphasize to the entire citizenry the potential programs that we have. And I've asked Sean from the Board of Health, I've asked the mayor is going to participate. Oh man. Alicia Zoller is going to talk about some of the programs through community development. I've asked Officer Colon to talk about some of the programs from the Ray Street Community Policing Center. And I've invited Jesus from the Veteran Services. Now that we have Jeff here, I would probably invite him from Holyoke Community College to talk about the various kind of things that we can do, that when we're going and we're seeing people on the street, that we encourage them. These are all the kind of things, you know, if you have an issue with food, if you have an issue with homes, you have an issue with education, jobs, whatever, that these are the kind of things that we can connect you with. And we really need to encourage them to participate in those programs. So that is coming. And I know Scott's been working with me to try to set that up. So
Nice.
Sean hasn't accepted my invitation yet, though, but I'm sure he probably will. Sean, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start right off by saying that we are not unique in this situation, but that many communities who are trying to tackle this continue to struggle with it. Recently, the ACLU just struck down another panhandling ordinance in Central Mass. I really, as much as I understand the intention behind, you know, putting restrictions there, it seems that the legal challenges to what is perceived as controlling free speech are going to prevent us from pursuing that avenue. And I agree with Councilor Murphy that I think that there's a good amount of outreach that would probably need to be done as well. And I think that what was suggested by Councilor Murphy, and we've discussed it before, is that many of the focus of our discussions previously has been focused on, trying to encourage panhandlers to leave the spot. But I think that one of the points of emphasis is people are there because there continues to be a revenue stream there. And I think the nature of that commercial and perhaps some other creative advertising or charitable drives that we can do, maybe working to show in a public sense that we're moving to address these concerns in a constructive and controlled way. Yeah, I do believe that one of the only ways we're going to slow this down is to slow the flow of revenue. I mean, I drive down High Street every morning on my way to City Hall, and I see people coming off 391 right there, right as they're coming into the city. They're giving people money at that intersection. It starts right there. People coming up and down High and Maple Street, and I do think that some signage or some visible, what's the word I'm looking for? Visible campaigning to say, look, there is a way to help people. Giving them money on the street is not it. You want to be humane. You want to treat these folks that are panhandling. I mean, they're people, right? And I think you don't want to demonize the people that are there, but you also want to address the fact that some of the folks there are taking advantage of a situation and they're misrepresenting their struggle. Some of those people, admittedly, we've seen enter and leave the city in groups. There are people who are truly in need, and there are other people who are taking advantage of people that are charitable. And so I think that it may help to have I don't want to say a task force, but a group that goes out and engages these folks on a regular basis, that documents who they're dealing with, what their struggles are, what their needs are. I think that'll help us understand also where the legitimate need is versus where people are sort of, they're just here to collect money because there's an easy source. And sometimes you see new faces and sometimes you don't. So I think getting to know these folks on a regular basis, I know we've done some inventory in the past, on kind of like a spot basis and try to gauge how many panhandlers or people in that situation there were. But I don't know that it's been a regular sort of dialogue and working with these people to address their needs on a consistent basis. So I think making sure that services are available and making sure people are aware and encouraging them to do that, perhaps through a non-confrontational approach, would be one way. But then also, I just think that there's a public service aspect for, especially if you're not a Holyoke resident. You come to Holyoke, understand the optics of the situation. We understand you just want to help, but if you really want to help, how about you approach this charity, or how about you volunteer some time, or how about you donate goods to services that will meet these folks' needs in a more organized way. And I think that will do a lot to cut down on this, but it's going to take time. And the only way to stop new people from coming in is to cut down on the flow of the money. Because if we had 18 people, just as a hypothetical, and you got all 18 people in services and turn their lives around, it would be a tremendous success. If there's still money being brought to the street corners in that manner, new people will come. And I think kind of stopping that flow needs to be a priority.
Now I know in my ordinance, or in my order, I did say public safety, public health, education, board of health, so on and so forth. But just a few minutes ago, you had mentioned that ACLU, they were striking down an ordinance that other communities had come up with. And so that got me thinking. I said, why don't we bring ACLU to the table? Because if you want to strike it down, that's fine. I don't have an issue with you striking it down. But if you want to be part of the conversation, then join us at this table so that we can collectively think of a way that they can agree with, where they feel comfortable saying, you know what, let me help. Instead of striking down, join the table, come with us, have this discussion with us. You're for the people, so are we. Let's figure this out together. So I'm wondering, who should we be contacting at ACLU so that we can have them join this conversation that we're having? And not just this community, all the communities that have the same issue with panhandling.
Well, I know Attorney Barnes has some contacts. Now, whether or not and I don't want to speak for you, Attorney Barnes, but if in line with what Councilor Anderson-Burgos is requesting, is that possible that you might be able to contact somebody and see if they'd be interested in being part of this?
I think Crystal Barnes might have some input on that. I've just seen her.
Yeah,
hand.
yeah.
So we do have a contact there. We've dealt with them before in prior situations where we've done something that they didn't like, but in that process, we also sort of created a contact where sort of preemptively we can go to them and say, look, we have this idea. So, you know, most recently we were trying to cut down the revenue stream. So our thought was, you know, if the cars were stopping, that was becoming sort of a public safety issue. Well, it turns out we actually have an ordinance on our books that say cars can't, you know, obstruct traffic. They need to pull over where it's safe to do so, et cetera. So their thought is that we already have a content neutral ordinance, and to try and limit people from allowing the activity of panhandling violates sort of what this new SJC decision said, that, you know, panhandling is now becoming a protected First Amendment right, because we allow people, you know, peddlers, hawkers, that sort of thing to happen where people are selling goods, requesting money on the side of the road, just like panhandlers do. And so they're saying that you can't limit one among all the others. Certainly there's distinguishing characteristics there, but it's essentially panhandling is now a First Amendment right, is what we're being told. And so trying to limit that in any way is now getting sort of a slap on the hand from the ACLU, which then, you know, promotes a lawsuit, and we're trying to avoid those. But I'm happy to reach out to her and see if she's willing to discuss with the council. I don't know how that's going to go or what she can provide. She was willing to work with language, but as I mentioned, she even went through our ordinances and said, look, you have something here that is very similar, and, you know, it hits your public safety aspect nail on the head. So I can reach out to her. I'll work with Juan to sort of narrow down what we want her for and see if that's something they're willing to do. It can't hurt.
What I'm trying to avoid is putting all this work and all this effort, right? Which I don't mind, but putting all this work and all this effort, having all these individuals work together to find a solution to only get shut down by the ACLU. So why not bring them to the table to beat that, so that they can look at it and say, hey, you know what? This is within your right. This is going to work. This is going to help not only your community, but other surrounding communities. I think they need to be part of this conversation.
Okay. Councilor Sullivan, then Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, thanks. There's a third element to this that we're kind of missing that we need to touch on, and that's called just plain simple enforcement. And this isn't a matter of compassion. This ain't a matter of our most vulnerable citizens. There's now an element going on of illegal transactions and using this venue as a cover for those actions. I've observed it myself on multiple occasions now, and the panhandling has also now become a cover for drug sales. That exchange, that money that's going in, there's a product coming back, and some of these panhandlers are now drug dealers. And no one can tell me that people are driving down from Vermont to get off the highway here to give a few bucks to a homeless person or a person in need in Holyoke, and then getting back in their car and driving back to Vermont. And this is a matter of enforcement, all right? And this is a third element that we could take action on immediately, and it's got to start getting addressed, because it's exponentially exasperating the problem, and I'll tell you, it's getting worse by the day out there.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from, Councilor Sullivan, but I also don't want to assume. I know you can say guaranteed. I know in my heart that this is what they're doing, but without evidence, we can't say that. And every instance,
my own eyes.
I understand. I'm just trying to keep this neutral, because once you go too far to one side, things get a little messy, and then I'm trying to I am trying to find a solution. I'm trying to be peaceful about it and trying to find a solution. I understand where you're coming from. Trust me. I completely understand. I've seen a few sketchy things myself. I just don't want to bring that to the table and then make this.
And I agree with everything you say and everything you're doing, and the council or a bunch of us have been trying to do that. I just want to make sure everybody's alert.
It's all addressed. Yeah.
Third element. Let's not.
Right. Yes. No. Nobody's talking about it. We all see the elephant in the room. Nobody's talking about it, but we know. It's like, we don't need to address it. We need to address it, but we don't need to point it out. We know already. It's part of the problem. But how we go about is a different story, and that's what I'm trying to do here.
Yep.
And we're trying to put, and I think your order and it's just part of the whole process.
Yeah.
We do have to have enforcement. We do have to have people that can educate those in need on what we can provide. And also we got to encourage the community not to be giving so that they won't take our services. Those services are going to give them a quality of life. So if we're really compassionate about the people on the street, we're much more compassionate by sending them to programs than we are by handing them money.
I totally agree.
You all set?
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. Don't read me wrong. I just didn't want this element left out of the equation.
No, thank you. Thank you for your input.
And that's why I filed a couple of orders, because I've had the police asking me to try to find other ways to do that. So, Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So,
Mr. Chair.
And I'll get you after Councilor Bartley.
Howie, Howie can go first. Howie's good. I can wait.
Councilor Bartley.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to just point that up. So there's a, and then I'm going to go through the chair to the Ward 6 councilor in a minute. So just to point something out, and then hopefully I'll get some feedback on this. So what they're referencing is a lawsuit, Massachusetts Coalition for the Homeless and others versus the City of Fall River and others, and they're in the Supreme Court of Massachusetts struck down a state law, and I hope that, I have it here on my computer, but I know Crystal can get it to you, or if you can want to email me, I'll forward you the opinion myself. And it's important if we're gonna actually try to tackle this, then you need to get the understanding from the SJC, which, by the way, at the very end, I'm not gonna waste your time by scrolling down there, because it's a fairly long opinion. But it's very, very readable, as most of them are. At the very end, it says you can still do this. And so now I'm going to go through the chair to the Ward 6 counselor, who happens to be the legislative aide for the state rep. Now, and I hope you have a pen and a pad, and maybe you want to jot this down. So the law they struck down was Chapter 85, Section 17A. They said we conclude that law is unconstitutional on its face. But then at the end, as I indicated, it gave a glimmer of hope to the legislators to figure out a way to make it constitutional. So it's my hope that the Ward 6 counselor will not only work on that in Boston, that the counselor will also consider, through his office, reaching out to the ACLU himself, or in this case, it was the Massachusetts Coalition for the Homeless, who walk in and out of the State House on a daily basis. So you can't just say to me, Crystal, call them up or something. You're there in Boston. You have now the conduit, respectfully, to make these contacts yourself. And then come back to the city of Holyoke, I hope, with not just feedback, but with possibly a solution, something called legislation. That's what you're supposed to do. So it's a state law that was struck. Wasn't a local ordinance in the city of Fall River. It was a state law. That's your job. Amend the state law, make it constitutional. You do that by having committee hearings like we're doing now. You do that, I hope, by getting input from the ACLU, the Coalition for the Homeless. Do the homework that your office allows you to do. And I think we're all going to be beneficiaries for it. I'm going to add one more point just to my friend, Councilor Sullivan, just to follow up on what he said, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Right.
I mean, I heard somebody talk about, produce evidence, and I know we want to simmer down the tension, and believe me, I'm simmered for the type of temper that I have. But and you can ask Crystal, who's on this call herself. And we talked about this in DGR Monday night after during a 4-hour and 35-minute meeting. That most of you were, and I appreciate all you were there. Most of you were here, not all of you. But during that meeting, we talked about 67-69 Longwood, wherein a panhandler, and I knew the guy, Pat the panhandler. You talked to him, not a bad guy, but had obviously some issues. He was a squatter at 67-69 Longwood. Okay, so big deal, you might say. To make a long story slightly longer, to get him out of a house that he'd never owned, the city of Holyoke or whatever entity, I have to get that from Crystal, had to give Pat the panhandler and a couple others cash for keys, had to pay him money to voluntarily leave the house so that the eviction process could be avoided and the foreclosure could go through. Now, I asked you to consider that. Now, I didn't witness this. As Councilor Sullivan said, he witnessed numerous things, and I have, Councilor Sullivan's all over town, so I'm positive he did that. I hope that councilors will accept what I say. I hope they'll accept what Councilor Sullivan said, but I hope if they don't accept what I say, councilors will follow up with Attorney Barnes, and you can follow up with the building commissioner about what exactly, and Mr. Gonsalves, and what happened and the deplorable conditions, the havoc wreaked upon the neighborhood, the smells coming out of that building, never mind going in there. I never walked in there, thank God. The open drug deals, pretty tough. But these are panhandlers squatting in a house. Never owned it, had to be paid money, thousands of dollars. I'm not talking about a Happy Meal and a bottle of Coke, thousands of dollars for them to leave a house they never owned. Think about that. And if the legislative aide, who I see his name, Rep. Duffy, I see it right on there for his under his name right now. I see that. If the legislative aide would consider thinking about that and using his position to advocate for the city of Holyoke to amend the state law that was struck down by the SJC, the whole Commonwealth, never mind the city of Holyoke, the whole Commonwealth could benefit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councilor Graney.
Mr. Chairman, can I throw?
Yeah,
one?
I'll get back to you, Councilor Sullivan. Councilor Graney.
Just quickly. I think that, in discussions, everybody wants to do something about this, but I think we have an identification problem as well, with these people who are on the streets, I mean, some are sincere. Some of the clothing that some of these people are wearing are very expensive clothing, sneakers, jackets. Yep. Some of these people are dressed very well. They certainly do not identify or seem to identify as homeless. And then again, there are other people, such as I see an elderly gentleman on the corner of Hamden and Northampton Street who is all bent over, has a ragged old sign, and he's in tattered clothes, which probably would indicate that he is a lot less fortunate than some of the other people who are out there panhandling. I think the folks that are out there doing it, we need to identify who they are, where they live, what their situation is, and then when we find out that, we can probably start to crack down on those that are doing illegal things and helping those that are truly in need. Thank you.
Thank you. Sergeant Hart, can you hang on for 1 minute so I can let Councilor Sullivan, I know he had a response to Councilor Bartley, I think. And then I'll call on you, Sergeant Hart, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
Councilor Sullivan.
It was just to add an exclamation point to the thing. Pat the panhandler, one of his jobs there was to direct people to the location where his friends were selling drugs on Longwood. He was also a traffic director when the people got off from Vermont and where to send them to, where they could pick up their stuff. And in regards to the one that Councilor Graney just mentioned, at the end of his shift, he puts his cane in his backpack and gets on his mountain bike and rides off. So
Yeah.
there you have it.
No, Sergeant Hart.
Yes, thank you. I know we've been talking about this for quite some time, and from my perspective, I think it is going to have to be. It's not a one solution problem. It's going to be multifaceted. It's going to have to be education. We have to educate the public and let them know that there are resources out there for these people, and there are services for them. So there's no need, I think, a campaign to educate the public on not providing money to the panhandlers. I know one department actually talked about and had numbers of I believe it was 26 people overdosed from money they received from people giving it to them, and 6 out of those 25 died. So one message could be it's a potential for them to contribute to one's death, but just education in itself is a key thing. So a lot of people know or don't know that we're out there talking to these people sometimes 2-3 times a week, telling them the services we have, going out with clinicians, and you can't force people to do or to go for some of these services. And no, they've come out and told us, okay, I got to get back to work. Basically telling us, no, we don't need your help. I'm here and I'm getting money, basically. The other aspect is enforcement. And I think we can do, maybe step up and do a better job in enforcing some of the nuisance crimes without trying to create a backlog for the court systems. We'll have to talk about some type of strategies to incorporate that. The third thing we talked about before, but I haven't seen any response on that, and that is environmentally through designing different tactics. Like someone mentioned coming out 391, that short walkway. Why don't we put some of that plastic fencing up right on the edge of the curb, 3/4 of the way down?
I actually do have an order in, Sergeant Hart, to look at what we can do physically in terms of those kind of things.
Yeah, and same thing goes for Hamden and 5. Try and think outside the box and do some of those things. But it's definitely going to take all of those 3 things and a bunch of us at the table, and I'm glad we're forming a committee to try and get this resolved. Thank you.
We appreciate your input, Sergeant Hart, as usual.
And I just want to tell you, Councilor Murphy, I sent you a link about that video that the police do in regards of informing the public.
Okay.
I sent that link to you in your email.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm going to make sure that they're invited. I'm going to make sure it's a wide spectrum of people, because I do think I think we need to educate the general public about some of the negativity when they do give, plus the potential positively that could be there if panhandlers would accept the services, and not just panhandlers, other people that may be out there that need the services as well. So I think the more information we get out, the better we will be. Councilor Graney, you want to be recognized again?
No.
Okay, your phone flew up on my screen. If I could, I'd like to ask Jeff Hayden just to offer any comments from Holyoke Community College perspective, if possible. And if you would, I know you have a lot of programs that you work with, and maybe we aren't promoting those to people that really could use them. I know there's a lot of young people that I see down on Main Street at 391. And, you know, basically they tell me when I have a job, it's so low paying that it doesn't let me live somewhere.
Yeah, so, you know, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to learn about this issue. with all the counselors tonight. I think from the perspective of the college is number one, that the college, as well as many of the nonprofit entities in the city that work on issues like education and homelessness and food insecurity, et cetera, they're willing to help and to make a difference. I think someone mentioned earlier the notion of creating some kind of commission. And if there were a commission where this information about all these different services was available and published and promoted to the community, I think it could do two things. I think number one, obviously, it could offer services to the people in need that you're talking about. But secondly, it could also provide information to the Holyoke resident to say, hey, we have these things available for people in need. And so let's refer them to it. And so whether it's, on the food insecurity side, if it's the, Food Insecurity Task Force, if it's Providence Ministries with Kate's Kitchen and all of those types of things, if it's the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club new food program for young adults, if it's the food pantry at the college for college students and their families. So I think, that's possible. On the housing side, obviously, the Housing Authority can play a big role in terms of promoting I believe it's called Back to Work program, where if someone gets training and gets a job, then there's ability to freeze their rent payment so that all of a sudden, they're not paying more just because of the fact that they got a job. And there are other housing entities in the city, I think, that would rally around and try to help. On the educational side, especially on the workforce development side, I think it's really the Opportunity Academy of Holyoke Public Schools, it's Dean Vocational, it's Holyoke Community College, it's Mass Hire Holyoke, the old Career Point, all who could gather together and provide opportunities. We at the college have a significant number of training programs that are free to the individual, that are primarily paid for by grants. They're not just training, they're training with support services, case management type of approach. And so we provide clothing, we provide food, we provide transportation, we help connect them to vouchers for housing and for childcare. We provide access to mental health services, to addiction services, et cetera. So those programs, there are some of them that do have criteria for entrance, but primarily, anyone in the general public can take advantage of those. And this is probably the main point I wanted to make, Mr. Chairman, is that it's not necessarily about, even though it might be well-meaning, about going up to an individual and saying, here's a program for you. This is what can be done. It's really about trying to figure out ways to meet that person halfway. Because what we find is that the people who are successful in these types of training programs are the ones who are willing to sacrifice and to do the work necessary to make it happen. And it's not a magic pill. It's really, it's hard work on their part, as well as on the part of the service that's offered to them. So I think to the extent that we can promote the services that the city has and put the city in a very positive light, that we are, we are socially responsible, that we care about our fellow citizens, we care about our region, and to promote in such a way that, we have all these things together that can make a difference in people's lives. And then secondly, I think it's a way to figure out, how to bring these people in need, to the table. I've seen it happen where one of our teachers met someone at a gas station And from a 2-second conversation, that person ended up going to Amherst College. And it started a long path of adult basic education, getting a high school diploma, getting language help, getting a degree at the college at HCC, and then going to a 4-year institution. And there's all kinds of stories like that in terms of how these things can work. But it's really about how do you bring that person to that point.
And that's what we're trying to do here, is trying to get to that point where we can get the message out, but also make sure that they don't have a counter message that is preventing them or encouraging them not to try to do any of these other things that are going to improve their quality of life. Jeff, I appreciate you. If you don't mind, I might try to see if I can add you or someone from Holyoke Community College as we get into some of this programming that we're talking about to promote awareness in the city about what we've got.
I know the college would be happy to help, and this is my job. This is what I do.
Okay.
So I happily do that. Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Bartley,
Chairman?
do you want to be recognized again?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Mr.
I
Chairman?
know. I had the same.
No, let me fix it. My bad.
No problem. So, Councilor.
Mr. Chairman,
if we could, so I think we've made some progress here. We keep getting more people involved. I think we're all under an understanding of we're trying to do this, and it's got to incorporate a lot of different aspects.
Councilor, I think Councilor Graney had some kind of input to say.
Councilor Graney?
Yeah, just quickly, I was just brainstorming with my own head here, thinking that it seems to be one of the major problems with this issue is the citizenry, contributing, to the panhandlers and the people on the street.
Absolutely.
And it makes it, I felt good today. I gave a couple of bucks to somebody on the street. It's a feel good thing. Is there any way that the possibility if we went at it the reverse, or would we be violating somebody's First Amendment rights if we made an ordinance that it was illegal to hand somebody money?
We actually have an ordinance with which Attorney Barnes is kind of working, trying to see the legality of it right now. And I know we passed it in the ordinance committee to say it would be illegal to do that. Councilor Anderson-Burgos and Councilor Vacant are part of that committee, but I know right now. Then we got
Thank you.
A reply from ACLU. So, Councilor Anderson-Burgos, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna suggest that you do a little bit more in terms of reaching out with Crystal in terms of ACLU.
Sure.
I'm going to be reaching out to the Veteran Services. I'm going to be talking to Sean and I'm going to talk to Jeff from HCC to try to get, and the police department, trying to get a program that says what we offer, the negativity of when citizens do give, and just try to promote it on a positive. We want to help these people and get that programming out as a start. And then try to continue to work and keep adding people to this group. And then maybe in the next time, once we have one more meeting, maybe we actually get a task force together and actually try to go out in the street.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. And through you to Councilor Bartley, if I may.
Yes.
First of all, I want to apologize for not changing my name up on the little block here. I've been on Zoom meetings all day, and as a representing, the state rep. So I want to apologize for that, and I want to thank him for the information, the advice he gave me. Thank you so much, Councilor Bartley.
Okay. So for
Mr.
the
Chairman?
people,
It's Linda Vacant.
Okay, Councilor Vacant.
I'm sorry, I've been a little spotty. I'm jumping between two meetings tonight.
No, that's okay.
But I only wanted to comment relative to the ordinance order that the real focus of that order is a public safety initiative. It is not around restricting anybody's freedom of speech. I want to clarify that because there were some comments made at the city council meeting that I thought were misleading as to the intent of that order. Thank you.
No, I agree with you. The intent is the public safety and to try to make sure that, we're not holding up traffic and all the other things. So if I could, from the
Thank you.
committee, Councilman McGivern or Councilman McGee, if I could entertain a motion from either of you to table this.
Make a motion to
Motion
table
to
the item.
table.
Okay, motion is made and seconded to the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so we will keep working on that, Councilor Anderson-Burgos, and we will continue to make some progress and try to make more as we go along. Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to take item 3.
Item 3, if removed from the table.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
This is introduced by Councilor Leahy and former Councilor Jordan. Ordered that the representatives from Action Ambulance come into a meeting for the Public Safety Committee to discuss response times and other pertinent issues. I'm happy to, I think we've got 2 people from the ambulance, if I'm not mistaken, that are here. I'm pretty sure we do. And now I also want to welcome Chief Preskowski, who has joined us as well. And
Hi, Rock from Action. How are you?
Good.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for the report that you sent out.
Yes,
I
sir.
believe I asked, and I'm sure all the counselors, I think, received the report. Am I correct? Counselors, am I correct? We all got the report, right? So, and if I call you Rock, that's okay, Rock?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, I got it. And if you can, I would just have you give a summary. And then if we have any questions, I would turn it over. So.
Sure. So obviously the numbers are very positive. We're very happy with them. We're in our 4th full year, starting in 2021. It'll be our 4th full year in Holyoke. Our response times, our out of shoot times have been very good since we started, and we're very proud of that. We take a lot of effort to make sure that that's always the case. We work very closely with the fire department since we were incorporated into Holyoke. Initially, Chief John Pond, now Chief Preskowski. As you look through the report, there's a key at the last page to kind of explain some abbreviations. OOC, for example, is out of shoot. RES is response time.
Yep.
For the 2020 year, our out of shoot time average was 33 seconds. That means the time that the call is received to the time that the crew turns on the ambulance and starts moving the ambulance. Our response time in Holyoke average for the year is 5 minutes and 9 seconds. The threshold is 8 minutes max. We are very, very routinely far below that.
Threshold, you mean the worst case?
Yeah, the contract requires, and I believe it's a kind of a national time guideline of 8 minutes is where the longest acceptable response time is held.
Thank you.
As you know, in Holyoke, the busier wards are the wards closer to downtown. 5 and 7 are kind of the wards where we respond to the least, and when we do respond there, that's when we're on the 6-7 minute response time, especially if you're getting out towards the Southampton line, going towards Westfield, or if you're getting towards the Budget Inn per se, heading towards Northampton on Northampton and Route 5. We also measure scene times and transport times. Those are just to kind of gauge our distances to the hospitals or how long we hang out on scene to treat patients. The average for scene is 16 minutes. Average transport is 7 minutes. 7 minutes will probably just show you how many times, it gets bumped up when we go to Bay State or Mercy. The average distance to the hospital in Holyoke is regularly under 5 minutes. As you go through this report, it breaks down ALS versus BLS, advanced life support versus basic life support type calls. These are just whether or not a paramedic was the chief technician, kind of more of the acute cases of illness that require cardiac monitors, medication, advanced airways, versus the basic level cause, which might be a psychiatric emergency or minor cuts, bruises, or injury like that, a rolled ankle. You can break down the actual responses versus when you look into transports versus non-transports. Our year was down volume-wise pretty significantly, probably 1,000 to 2,000 activations per COVID. And you could see that dip as you look through the numbers in March, April, May. We routinely were doing close to 1,000 a month. January was kind of more on par for normal, but those numbers came down dramatically, and it wasn't a matter of less calls. Less people were calling 911, and they were having more severe illnesses at home. For a while, the only calls we were doing were COVID or possible COVID, and that has since resolved. We're just probably in January seeing almost normal volume since March. So the numbers are definitely depleted for 2020 compared to any other normal year.
Right.
We also have a breakdown of destinations, obviously the biggest one being Holyoke Medical Center. And then it just kind of breaks it down a few different ways from there based on complaint and volume. And there's a pie graph to kind of show you the usual complaints we're seeing, majorities versus minorities on those complaints. So that's kind of the gist of that report. It's just, it gives you a figure on the pulse of the health of the city of Holyoke and the type of thing our ambulance service is doing for you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask you a couple of questions? So right now, are you all located on South Street?
Yeah, good question. So when COVID occurred, obviously we needed to make adjustments for us, and the fire department needed to make adjustments for them to minimize interaction and potential spread of COVID, which could, impact our staffing abilities mutually. So we keep our ambulances exclusively at South Street for Holyoke right now, whereas before we had one ambulance in 3 of the fire stations. We did watch this closely as we went into that new setting and realized that the impact on response times or out of shoot times was hard to even trace. It was almost non-existent. So we were happy with that. And we're just kind of in this pattern of staffing out of South Street and posting units throughout the city as needed for volume at this time.
Okay, but I'm assuming, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that ultimately the goal would be to be back into 3 firehouses.
I think that's a goal of the chief, and we certainly are in support of that, however the city would want to go forward.
And just if I can ask one other question in terms of response time going out to West Holyoke. So I'm assuming they go to West Holyoke from either the Northampton Street Station, or the
Whiting Farms.
Whiting Farms, thank you.
Yeah, it would very routinely be Whiting Farms. If for any reason the Whiting Farms unit was on a call, we would then come from South Street and cut down Westfield Road.
Okay. Other councilors have any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Councilor Bacon?
I would just like to comment that in my professional capacity over on Jarvis Avenue, we've dealt with Action Ambulance personnel repeatedly, and I've found them to be timely, responsive, and professional. So we are grateful for their service here in Holyoke.
Thank you. It's nice to hear those good things. Rock, right? Nice to hear those, Rock, right?
That's all we want to hear. We're very appreciative for it.
Yeah. And I know Chief is with us, Chief Prespakowski, and I know right now with COVID still obviously having major issues, I'm assuming we're still months away from being able to have the ambulance service at each of the stations.
Yeah, we're monitoring the science, we're monitoring the vaccinations and how fast that's going. Obviously, everyone's aware of the news, and it's not going as fast as we all want it to go. So we're kind of in a holding pattern with staying separated for the time being until we get a good gauge of both units and their vaccination rate, and the number of COVID cases coming down a bit before we make that change. We really don't want to jump too far ahead and then have it kick us in the butt later. So
thank you, Chief. Okay, are there any other questions? I could as I looked at the reason for people coming, I mean, one was an altered mental status, one was psychiatric, and another one was overdose, which accounted for about 20% of the transports. And I'm assuming, and Rock, you can correct me, or Chief, you can correct me. So when you get a call, that call might have already gone to 911 to the police or fire? And then gets referred to ambulance,
Yeah,
or does it
so-
automatically get referred to ambulance?
No, the calls come through a primary PSAP, which is the primary location that a 911 call goes within a city. Holyoke, for example, is something called geofence. So when somebody in Holyoke calls 911 from a landline and from the vast majority of cell phones, it automatically directs to the Holyoke Police Department. They determine the nature and then can send it off to fire, EMS, or both. Other communities might have to direct from a cell phone to state police, then to local police, then to the other two branches.
So when you go to an altered mental status or a psychiatric case, I'm assuming, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that someone from police or fire is also there.
It depends on the nature. So for altered mental status, it would depend why. Are they altered because they're having a diabetic emergency or are unresponsive? Then most definitely we'll have police and fire. Are they altered because they're under the influence of alcohol? Then we're likely to have the police department, fire department's not necessary on those. And it all depends on how much information we can get through the EMD process or not.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That helps. I mean, again, knowing you want to be the right response as much as we can. So obviously the 911 operators and the information that they can get is crucial in terms of the right response. Chief?
Yep. The critical component to that question, and it's a very good one, is the local EMD. The EMD dispatching through Action Ambulance really sends the right resources to the right call at the right time. And that's the critical thing. And doing that locally, when we signed the contract with Action, we took that EMD component, we brought it in locally. So we're able to gauge the community better. We're able to gauge what needs to go to certain calls, and doing it at the local level has really made a big impact in the city.
Yeah, and that's definitely positive in terms of not having incidents where someone's there and they're not really the person that may be best to be able to handle the situation. So, but obviously you want to be in a situation where if you need support, you got that as well. So, but I appreciate all of I thought it was a great report, Rock, and I appreciate it. Councilman McGiver and Councilor McGee, any thoughts?
I could,
No,
Mr.
Counselor.
Chair, I'd just like to take the opportunity to say thank you to Rock and all the people and all the EMTs, everybody that works for Action Ambulance and the work you do. It should be said more and more. It's not just about COVID, but we greatly appreciate your presence here in the city of Holyoke. And I know Chief Peskopowski agrees with me that, you've been a godsend to so many people who are looking for the service in time of need. But thank you again for everything.
Councilor McGee?
Thank you very much for having us. We love being here.
Yeah, and I know Counselor Leahy was on here earlier, and I'm not sure what happened. I know for me, I've had some serious internet issues where this thing has crashed, and I think our last meeting, I got bumped off and had to call in. So he was here, just so we have that on the record.
Yeah,
and
I didn't notice that. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's been going around. So, to the chief as well as to Action Ambulance, the report is what we've been looking for. We get the calls too as to what's going on, and we got to answer some questions, but we truly appreciate what both of you are doing. So we thank you, and the report is very appreciated.
I'll entertain a motion that it's been complied with.
Motion has been complied with.
Second.
Okay. Just last comment. I was very impressed with the fact that I think 90% of the calls were less than 8 minutes and 50 something seconds. And I thought that's pretty impressive. So, and I would also offer my thanks to you, Rock, and keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll get you back into fire departments and make it keep that cooperation going. So motion is
Councilor
been.
Murphy,
Absolutely.
Councilor Murphy, if I may just.
Sergeant Hart?
Yeah, a couple 2 cents for the police department.
Yes.
And we would just like to also thank them for being here in the city. They've been doing a great job. Initial problems in the very beginning, just not knowing the area, but have tremendously improved, and we're very thankful for having them. And they're also an important partner in our opioid task force, where they also gather statistics to help us out with determining some of our problems. So I just wanted to make note of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant Hart. Okay, the motion is made that the order's been complied with. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The opposed? I'm assuming, even though I didn't hear you, Councilman McGivern, that was a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm right next to you. Come on.
Well, I know, but you know, my hearing, you know, I'm getting old. Don't go there. Thank you, Rock. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and everyone else. Have a great night.
Item 4.
Motion to take up item 4.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Order introduced by Councilor Anderson-Burgos, order that the city engineer look into potentially changing the driveway into People's Bank off of Beach Street to only be an entrance. There have been safety concerns related to the slope of the driveway, leading cars out of the property into traffic, and that is often rushing to make the light. I know we did get a report, and I know it was distributed. I'm assuming the councilors have received it. Councilor Anderson-Burgos, have you had a chance to look at it?
I did. I saw the report and I noticed that it was mentioned that some of the vehicles were making left when it specifically says, and it's posted not to make a left. And that is, to be honest, when I reached out to one of my constituents, that was the issue, where he was driving up and the car made a left and almost hit his. And so that's an issue. So I'm wondering if there's a way to address that, at the very least. We have to find something, because I'm imagining that if it happened on their watch in that short span of time, can you imagine on a day, on a week, on a month? It's just going to add to an accident. It's just going to lead to an accident, rather.
Okay, we have city engineer Bob Parent, and I don't know if Mike McManus is with us. I don't think so.
Just myself this evening.
Okay, Bob, would you, is there a way that we could make it much more difficult to take a left turn? Where it would basically make the car coming out go right with some kind of curve or something?
Possibly. There may be space limitations given the width of that driveway to try to place some sort of an island in the middle of the driveway to be able to still have space for 2 vehicles to travel. It certainly can be concerned, and that's why when it was in the planning board review, as I indicated, that we required that right-hand turn only sign to be placed.
Right.
And I will note that whatever happens at that exit can also happen at the Northampton Street exit.
Right.
And as much as we try to encourage drivers to behave in certain ways, oftentimes they don't. And as my report indicated, I sat there for an hour and I saw 5 vehicles leave, and all 5 vehicles took a left-hand turn, because quite honestly, the most convenient way to get back downtown from that location is to take a left-hand turn. To take a right-hand turn means you need to drive down Northampton Street, could then go down West Franklin or go down Sergeant, you know, potentially creating issues there as well. You know, if drivers pay attention to the gaps in traffic, which is what drivers are supposed to do, it doesn't create a problem. But if we have a driver who's rushed that doesn't pay attention to the gaps, there absolutely can be problems.
Is there any way we can put like maybe, you know, there'll be a fine if they make an illegal turn here?
I believe, and I'm not a public safety official, so I can't say with certainty, but I believe that the activity that might be finable would be taking a left-hand turn and then blocking traffic. Taking a left-hand turn out of a driveway is not anything that is prohibited by state statute or by city ordinance or anything else. But putting your vehicle in the roadway and obstructing traffic, I believe, is something that would likely, you know, lead to could lead to enforcement. So I don't believe the police department would have the ability to ticket somebody taking a left-hand turn, because it's really a private activity. It's a left-hand turn out of a private driveway, and not.
Or it's not an ordinance. It's just
not an ordinance. Correct.
It's just banking policy.
Right. The reason I wanted to put my eyes on this myself was to really gauge how significant the problem is. And I do plan to get back to there again during another peak period of time. I know when I did speak to a representative of People's Bank, he did make the point that to put all the traffic to the Northampton Street exit would only create larger problems. So not the applicant, but the designer of this project did design things correctly. They put the driveways as far away from the intersection as possible, which is good design practice, because when you put driveways close to intersections, they do create problems. They did put in the right-hand turn sign, because we did have concerns about traffic coming down the hill, coming down Cherry Street, and what might happen if a driver was to do something stupid and drive halfway across the street and then jam all the traffic up. But people are people.
Yeah, right.
So I don't have a good feeling, quite honestly, of the severity of the problem, how often it occurs, if it has created any problems, accidents in the past. If a driver is frustrated that somebody cuts out in front of them and they have to slow down, is that something that's actionable? I'm not sure.
Councilor Bartley?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to stay for this order for sure. I think it's a very good order. I'm just going to make a couple observations through the chair to Mr. Parent. And I'm not necessarily looking for a response, but I just for your consideration. So the first thing that comes to mind is, have you obtained accident reports on this area from HPD? I'm going to suggest to you that that's probably going to be an important part of your analysis. Second of all, you did answer my question so you have been in contact with somebody at People's Bank. I guess to the chair, was somebody from People's invited to this meeting? I would hope we would probably, but if it wasn't tonight, then I would want us to consider it, maybe perhaps tabling this and have somebody from People's, because it's more important getting them on the microphone than on the camera.
They were invited. They were invited.
Yeah. Okay. So if they can't be here in person, they could probably send the communication, but that's important. A couple other things. Whether or not this would be a candidate for do not block the box. It may be a candidate. I have no idea, but if that's the case, you may be able to do something about allow the left-hand turn. The ultimate plan would be a traffic light. It's probably pretty close to Northampton Street, and it's probably pretty close to Hospital Drive. Still, if it's a speedway and we want to promote public safety, then perhaps that should be considered. And then the last comment is going to be that I would agree that it probably wouldn't work for a fine, because we would have to have an ordinance on the books for a fine. And I got to be honest, I think it'd be a stretcher case to say a left out of a private lot would be subject to a fine. However, if that's something that the engineer wants to look at outside of an order, perhaps the engineer could look at the efficacy of actually proposing a potential ordinance for that instead of having us file it. Maybe the Board of Public Works could consider it and see if that actually made sense. And then if it did make sense, then you could come back and say, file an ordinance suggesting a fine for a left turn there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? And let me apologize, because Councilor Graney, please accept my apology. I noticed as I'm reading the order, while you did sign on to it at the meeting, and I didn't note that. So this has also been co-signed by Councilor Green. So
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Thank you, Councilor Murphy.
You're welcome. So I think we still got more information to get. Councilor Anderson-Burgos, Councilor Graney, if we were to, I know Mr. Parent is going to check out once or twice more to see if it's excessive traffic and all that kind of thing. And Councilor Bartley just made some additional suggestions that might be included in this. So if it's, I'll be all right. I would suggest that maybe we table it and come back in about 4 weeks.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, Graney.
Assuming my committee members will go along with it. Go ahead.
I didn't know if Councilor Anderson-Burgos had a question for Councilor Graney or.
No, I'm sorry. No, I thought Councilor Graney had some input.
Okay, Councilor Graney.
Yeah, no, I had, you know, I agree with tabling it, and we'll come back to it when we get more information.
Okay.
Perfect.
Make a motion to table the item.
Second.
Okay, motion is made in table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then entertain a motion to accept item 5.
Number 5 off the table.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Introduced by Councilor Graney, and I'm thinking this one also has.
Councilor Vacant co-signed it too.
And Councilor Tallman, so three signers. Order that the 3 additional speed limit postings of 30 miles per hour be placed in strategic locations on Mountain Road. Excessive speed on that road has been a severe safety hazard.
Have received our report. Our review and the recommendations, I think, can be summarized.
Can we, in essence, mute whoever else is?
Yeah, I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Oh, that
Jeffrey.
was me. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, all right. No worries.
Okay, so Councilor Graney, it's your primary order.
Yeah, the residents are really concerned that it's becoming it's a very narrow winding road. Certainly icy conditions in the winter, and the traffic is people are using it as a bypass to go from one area over to the East Hampton Road, and they're concerned that there's going to be a fatality there if something isn't done to cut down the speed. I don't know what the legalese of the speed is, but 30 miles an hour seems to be a reasonable posting. There is one posting at the beginning coming from the East Hampton Road area onto Mountain Road at 25 miles an hour, I believe. But and then when you get to Mountain Road, there is no posting heading down that way until you reach probably almost 3/4 of the way down the road, and there's a posting there for 30 miles an hour. And on the other side, at the very beginning, I think there's a posting. But there needs to be more posting. There needs to be more signage on that road before somebody really gets injured or killed in a car accident, because the speeding going on there has now become much more apparent and much more frequent than it has in the past. Thank you.
Councilor Bacon, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the work that Bob has done out on Mountain Road. It's a very frustrating situation because all the speed studies come back and say the speed can be 40 miles an hour. If you ever drive down that road and you see a home that's about, and I'm not good with space, but to me, it seems like it's practically in the road, to have a car going by your front yard at 40 to 50 miles an hour would be absolutely frightening. Some of you may know the counters. I mean, their home is practically on the road, literally. The one idea that Bob put in his latest feedback to the committee that I really liked was the idea of marking the area thickly settled. I've seen that in other communities that have the community-wide marking. And I know it's not enforceable except if a police car is following the driver. But I do think that particular signage when you're coming up on an area does make people think a little bit more about what they're doing and how fast they're going. I do think the horse signs helped a little bit. So the drivers are hopefully thinking that they're out in a country and a farm animal zone rather than just cutting through a urban street. But it's a tough problem out there. And I know Bob said that the police department hadn't replied back officially, and we'd asked a couple times for like a special judgment consideration regarding speeds on that road. I had gotten an informal call that when the police went out and did their review, it came out basically the same as the speed study, which if we posted those signs would be completely contradictory to what the residents are looking for, which is why since 2018, we haven't put up any more speed signs. But I totally agree with the spirit of Councilor Greeny's order. I shared with him some of the work that had been done in the past, but hey, sometimes if you ask again and try to look at a situation again, you come up with some better answers. And I do think the thickly settled option is something worth trying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. Bob, could I ask two things? Number one, so if we were to do that, would putting signs up also just saying it's thickly settled, and then we would create a 25-mile-an-hour zone? Is that what I'm hearing?
What we would do is to put the 25-mile-per-hour signs up. As you know, the council has adopted a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit for business and thickly settled districts. We don't need to define the thickly settled district other than it being in place in terms of thickly settled is defined as houses every 200 feet for a length of at least, I believe it's a quarter mile. Okay. And as I noted in my memo, the beginning of Mountain Road coming off of Southampton Road for the first, let's see, up to Cross Road would meet that criteria, and for the last third mile of the road coming down to Rock Valley would meet that criteria. So we could put those signs up tomorrow.
Okay.
No ordinance is necessary. The city council has already adopted the ordinance that creates that limitation. The 25-mile-an-hour sign would basically be a reminder on site to the drivers that that 25-mile-an-hour speed limit is in fact in effect. So that, again, that we could do very quickly.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilor Bacon.
Through the chair to Mr. Parent, because I'm sort of spatially impaired, does that area that you are referring to include that particular house that's practically on the road? Do you know which home I'm referring to?
Unfortunately, I don't. I'd have to pull up a map and look at up the property owner.
Hang on. I'll get the number at least of the road. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I believe, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Councilor Graney.
I believe that house does. There's a series of homes there within a distance within that 200 feet radius that Mr. Parent is talking about. I know the Walshes are next door. There's an O'Connell house before the Walshes. There are several houses across the street. Now, if you take the houses across the street on each side of the street, I believe that 200 feet zone would definitely be in play.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Graney.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Councilor Bacon.
It would be 427 Mountain Road. So I'm just not sure where it falls in your description.
I will have an answer
shortly.
Very soon.
Thank you.
I believe by eye, and so I don't have, I believe that falls into the bottom 1/3 that I referenced from Rock Valley Road heading back up Mountain Road.
Okay, great.
Yes,
thank you very much.
Yeah.
I was hoping it did.
Yes. It's
Okay.
certainly close to it if it doesn't.
Okay.
Probably close enough.
Thank you so much.
I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilor McGivern.
Bob, is there a reason why we can't just make the speed limit 25 miles an hour for the entire street?
first, my question would be, are you looking to make it a 25-mile-an-hour posted speed? And if so, there's a fairly extensive process that you have to go through. You can't just on a whim post it at 25. And to be enforceable, to post it as 25 miles per hour, it needs to be a thickly settled district. And, you know, the risk is you post it and that posting may encourage some people to slow down, but it may not be enforceable.
So thickly settled would be only enforceable for parts of the road.
That's correct. Again, from
That's
Southampton
why
Road
I
down
asked
to
for
Cross.
2 reasons, actually, because I don't think you have to post something to make it thickly settled. Thickly settled, you know, there's a lot of streets in the city that are in the thickly settled category without signs being put up.
You're
Most
correct
of the
there.
city is thickly settled.
Yeah, the existence of the homes create the thickly settled.
Because when we adopted going from 30 to 25, we agreed that anything that is posted above 25 remains posted until the city council changes the speed limit. So I think we're creating a catch-22 here. I think the road, you know, needs to be lower speed, but if you live there and you want to go 25 miles an hour, that's something the neighbors need to think about.
If I can, the speed limit on Mountain Road is an interesting topic because it is not a 30-mile-per-hour roadway. It is currently statutorily a 40-mile-per-hour roadway. And that is what, because the city council has not adopted a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit for that road. And to do so, it's not impossible, but it's a fairly comprehensive process that needs to be followed and ultimately approved by Mass DOT and the Registry of Motor Vehicles. If you don't do that, again, you can put signs up, but the signs would not be enforceable at that point.
Well, I think, and I'll defer to the makers of the orders, but I think what we have here is a notorious road in the city of Westfield that's very similar to Mountain Road, where there's been numerous accidents over the past decade, very, very serious accidents. And I think even though it's a long process, you know, if we want to work with the thickly settled signs for now, that's great. But I think we need to work to change the speed limit and to convince the state that 40 miles an hour is not safe for this road. The road's not only long and winding, it goes from narrow to wider in different points, which has always been, I think the state understands, you know, the problem of a road that varying widths are part of the problem, not just speed, you know, for causing accidents.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Graney.
let's fix the immediate problem that we can right away and work on the other problem at a later date. But let's get something done, okay? Thank you.
Okay, I just want to recognize Councilor Tomlin, who has joined us, and I think he also would like to be recognized.
He's on mute though.
Yeah, you're on mute, Peter. Peter, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I'm on my iPhone. I'm not used to doing this from an iPhone.
Well, you're better than me, so hang in there.
Yeah. I signed on
Are
to the
you at the
order
barber
because,
shop here?
yeah, I'm in the chair, right. I signed on to the order because the issues, I got a few calls from a few of the residents up there, and I'm familiar with the issue with the road. And, you know, I'd like to see, even though it'll take a little bit of a process to make the road down to the 30 miles per hour, you know, because of the way the road is situated. And it's because it is a long road, and some of those houses are close, you know, to the street. So, but whatever anything we can do immediately, I think would be important too. And as Councilor McGivern always stated, enforcement, if we can get a couple more, you know, details up there, police at different times during the day, especially maybe early morning or late in the day for, you know, a half hour at a time, I think that would help, and to try to slow down some of these cars and try to issue some tickets, maybe with that grant that we got coming, maybe, you know, during the week, we can get a couple of, maybe get a cruiser up there in the morning hours, and then late, just for a half hour, maybe 7:30 to 8 and maybe 4:30 to 5, to maybe let people know that we're serious about this issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Con. So if Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. Just to follow up, so what Mr. Parent has described to us in his response tonight is exactly the process that we went through in 2018, attempting to address this matter. It was before we changed the citywide limit, and the goal of the neighbors at that time was to, in ordinance, create the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, feeling that, that would be a safer speed. However, when Bob did refer it over to the police department to get the judgment determination relative to attempting to change that speed, is when we ran into the next roadblock, because their study came back essentially the same way. And this was reported to me informally, not in writing, the same way that the initial speed study that had been done by DPW, or initially through the police department, whoever did that, it really came back the same. So we hit that same roadblock that's being described to us tonight. So that's why I'm very much in support of marking the thickly settled areas, because it'll be a visual. And as much as the sign is by ordinance or not by ordinance, at this point, I would be strongly supportive of putting up the 30-mile-an-hour signs. At this point, I almost don't even care if they are enforced or enforceable, because how many of our speed limit things are being enforced anyway? But at least it would be there as a visual for the drivers, who now are just they just sort of feel like they can go any old speed they want, because there's really nothing out there. So I don't know how Bob feels about that, but my feeling is just get a couple more signs up there with the thickly settled signs, and let's hope the drivers believe they're enforceable and follow them. Yeah. I think it's worth a try, personally. But
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Green.
Yeah, well, Bob also said you could put 25 mile per hour in a thickly settled area. Put the 25 mile an hour signs in those areas, and the distance isn't that great from one area to the other that Mr. Parent is talking about. I think it's probably a half a mile, the first segment of Mountain Road, and then there's an area where the houses are more spread out for maybe, I would say, another mile or so, and then it becomes thickly settled again. So from what point A to point B, you're going to considerably cut down the speed of the traffic going through there if those signs are there. Thank you.
So just to the makers, and would this be something you would be agreeable to, that we would recommend that we create a thickly settled district with posting the 25 mile per hour signs, and potentially then looking to see if we can get permanent 30 mile per hour ordinance eventually passed?
That sounds great.
I'm okay with that.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Councilor Bacon, that'd be okay?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay. Councilor McGee and Councilor McGivern, would you be okay?
Motion that the order is complied with, and we refer any recommendations to the city engineer.
Second.
Okay. All right. Motion is that it's been complied with, and that will we recommend that we make it a
Mr. Chairman, I think the conversation discussion this evening is the recommendation, but I think we should stop short from voting on any recommendations that could be libelous.
That could be what?
Libelous.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilor Bacon.
Just, if I could just through you to Mr. Parent.
Yep.
So by the action of the committee calling it complied with, do you feel that you could go out there and put up the thickly settled signs with the 25 mile notice?
Yes, no legislative action is needed to put those signs.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Parent.
Thank you, Bob.
The motion is that it's been complied with. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Bob, thank you. And we got one more for you, Bob. I think. I entertain a motion to take up item 6.
Make a motion to take 6.
Item 6 is introduced by Councilor Hernandez. I don't think she's here. But since Bob gave us a report, it's ordered that in abundance of caution and taking into consideration all the continuous accidents on Walnut and Cabot, a bigger stop sign with lights on it would be most beneficial and would make this corner much safer. Lots of pedestrians utilize the intersection, and although most of the accidents are involving vehicles, these measures will ensure pedestrian safety. Bob, if you can just offer, I know you talked about solar flashing,
Certainly.
solar powered flashing signs.
Right. And I believe that is what Councilor Hernandez is referring to. She referenced a bigger stop sign with lights on it.
Mm-hmm.
And as I noted, I believe that they are effective. We have installed a couple of them in the city at some of the very high accident rate intersections.
Right.
As we're starting to see the effectiveness of them, given the cost, they're not inexpensive. The material cost alone is about $1,500 per sign. And the batteries typically need to be replaced every 3 to 4 years. So I said, plan on maybe you're replacing the entire unit every 5 years, you know, given the way that electronic technology is. I think as
that's even though they're solar batteries. Huh? Those are solar batteries?
They are solar. It's a solar panel that charges batteries such that the stop sign can run overnight.
Okay.
They're much cheaper, even long term, than running typically in some remote locations, in particular running power in to a stop sign and feeding that with continuous power. So the solar lighted stop signs, if you're going to go with lighted signs, are definitely the way to go. As we see more of these requests come up, we want to start having a better idea of what threshold do we start considering that investment. And I don't know a number today, but I think I need to collect a little more information to know, is it, you know, one issue once a year? Is it an issue every multiple years? Is it an issue every month? You know, certainly if it was that type of frequency, it would likely be an area where the city would want to invest that type of money into a stop sign. If it was infrequent, maybe not. Maybe just a larger sign without the flashing lights and the solar.
Which would be much cheaper.
Yep.
Okay. And so I know at the end of your report, you did say you would be checking with the police department for the last 5 years of accident reports there. So if we were to table this now and come back in 4 weeks just to see what that is, and then we would know whether we want to do solar or just an enlargement?
That should be fine. The police department, the officer Karen Porter, is typically very responsive.
Okay.
I've made that request already. So once I have that information, I should be able to take a look at it and again, get a better perspective of where does this fit into, you know, the intersections that we have a higher or lower frequency of problems.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, if I make a suggestion that we just report the orders complied with and allow Mr. Parent to use the better judgment of his department.
Okay. Councilman McGee?
Yeah, if he's just going to follow back up, and if they need the sign, he's going to put it in, then that would be complied with. He's just waiting for more information. So I'd say it's complied with.
The material cost is not an issue, Bob?
It all depends, you know, it depends where we are during the year. It depends, you know, what the budget looks like. It's, you know, we try to stretch the dollars as much as we can. So if there's a need and there's really demonstrated need, we'll do what we have to do.
Okay.
But we also want to make certain that we don't make that investment here and have another location that needs it even more.
Okay, thank you very much. And if there's no other comments, the motion was made that it be complied with. Bob, I thank you for your patience and your time and your report. I appreciate it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, comply with 3-0. I'll entertain a motion to take item 7.
Item 7, take off.
Second.
Introduced by Councilor Bacon, ordered that the police department provide an update of drug overdose deaths in the last 2 years. Also provide an update of drug dealing arrests and crime stats, including shootings and murders in the last 2 years, and also many Holyoke residents and how many Holyoke residents it has involved. And I appreciate Sergeant Hart staying around, and I know Sergeant, you've submitted some reports to us, and I appreciate that. So, Council Bacon, I'll let you start, and then I'll have Sergeant Hart offer his thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My order was prompted by a couple of things. One, that for a number of years now, we have been tracking certain of the crime statistics to get a handle on how things are trending in our community. And I think it's important for us to pay attention to what the real data says. Sometimes we hear general statements, but I think it's important for us to know what's really happening on the ground. I also wanted to try to get a sense that about the statistics reflecting what people are sort of anecdotally talking about throughout the community to make sure that we are capturing all of the things that are going on. And secondarily, and this was an amendment to my order that I welcomed, in terms of looking at our drug situation here, you know, we're looking to try to make Holyoke a destination city for retail, to encourage some economic development and business development. But unfortunately, what I'm getting a sense of in some of the statistics is that we're like the destination point for drug users. And I think that these kind of statistics inform us in a way as to help us determine what our priorities should be throughout the city. And I support Councilor Sullivan in his goal of trying to seriously reduce the drug dealing within the city, because I think it's really a scourge in the city. We've had a lot of good collaboration between state police and our local police in addressing some of this, but it just seems like we're the magnet for this activity here. And I don't think that's what any of us are seeking for the quality of life or the safety within our city. So I do think these statistics are very important to inform us and to hopefully help us set our goals as a community. So that's kind of what's behind what I'm hoping to do with this type of a request. Thank you.
Yeah, it's much appreciated, Councilor Bacon. Sergeant Hart?
Yes, just to go over some of the stats, and I know the concerns with the crime. We got to kind of not look at this year. This year was a unique year with COVID, so the stats are going to be quite skewed as far as drugs go, and crimes and arrests and the such, just because of that. But there are still numbers out there, and we do have you know, high numbers of opioid use, and I'm not sure, but it could go back to the panhandling. You know, there's a lot of different issues here, and again, it's another complex one where it's just not the police department increasing or doing a zero tolerance policy. It's going to take landlords and business owners and the citizens together just to try and combat this problem. And with the times and technologies, these drug users have gone through the court system and know what types of actions police do in order to obtain warrants and the such. So it's getting harder and harder for our narcotics guys, even with the task force and state police, to try and get warrants to get the drug dealers, because it's difficult. One guy will pass the money to the next guy. Another guy will go to one room, one apartment will have the drugs, one will have the money, and it's so complex now that the police departments are really looking at other avenues, and some of them are costly ways in order for us to obtain warrants now. So it's getting more difficult, but it is a complex problem, and we're here to do whatever we can to help reduce the numbers of drugs coming in and out of the city.
And if I can, just, I know Sergeant Hart, you sent, and I think you sent it to everybody, but I'm not sure everybody got it. It was late in the afternoon, and it was a report of the opioid cases, and it was 705 cases, of which 279 of those were Holyoke residents. 100.
Those are yeah. So those are actually the clients that our opioid task force is dealing with.
Okay.
And those are the stats. We're looking at following up those unknown numbers through our records and obtaining more information, trying to kind of narrow that number down to. But I think the way it's looking is that the like close to 75% are going to be out of towners.
Are going to be out of towners?
Yes. Yeah, non-residents.
Okay. So most of those that are unknown, you're expecting they will be out of towners.
Yes.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilor Bacon.
Through the chair to Sergeant Hart, I'm just wondering, are there any strategies that could be brought to bear to discourage that migration into the city on a daily basis?
I'm sure we can work with the city on developing some and sitting together. You know, outside the box, I'd rather keep it not in the public.
No, I appreciate that. I certainly do appreciate that. But it just makes me think, you know, we want the people to come up to the mall, but we don't really want them to come up to get their heroin.
Yeah, correct.
Right. So any strategies that could be brought to bear in that regard seems like they would be greatly helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. Sergeant Hart, can I just, I'm just looking at the overdoses and Ward 1 was about more than a third of them were in Ward 1. Is there a particular area of Ward 1 that is a significant number? I think there was 132 overdoses in Ward 1.
Okay, you're looking at 2019 statistics?
Yep. I don't think I had the 2020. Oh, no, I do. Okay, it's 100.
Yeah, I sent them. It's a different graph.
Yep. Yeah, and it's Ward 1 is still the highest in 2020 as well. So.
Right. It did decrease a little bit.
Yeah, it did. But is that because of other things?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that as a big number, only because, and this is just my opinion, is because of the bus depot. We're getting a lot of transients from other communities coming in and out, and that's their in and that's their out. So I think a lot of it that might be one of the hubs.
So are the overdoses happening right around there?
I don't have the actual addresses.
Okay, but that's
with me, but
I think it's kind of a magnet for it.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Other councilors?
And I think keep in mind too, we also have the train station, in Ward 1 that brings people.
Right. Councilor McGivern, Councilor McGee, anything?
If I could.
Yep, Councilor McGivern.
John, I'm not sure if I follow the issue with the warrants, because you don't need a warrant for the bus station or the train station. You just need to make arrests.
Right, and it takes probable cause to do that, and it's kind of hard when these individuals are going into an apartment and then coming out of an apartment. It's been getting harder and harder for a lot of these cases just get thrown out.
I don't see a lot of distribution or drug trafficking cases getting thrown out. I see the opposite in the court system. When you say the task force, what task force are you talking about?
Well, we have multiple task force. We have the DEA, the FBI, the ATF, the gang task force.
So you're including the state police, you're including
federal, yeah,
federal, state, and you know task force that are designed to penetrate and to find these entities that are selling drugs. We've known for a long time that Holyoke isn't the biggest problem in Holyoke isn't people who use drugs, it's people who sell drugs.
Right.
We're on the I-91 corridor. We all know what that means in terms of moving drugs up and down north and south from New York, you know, from the cartels into the areas, and then of course Vermont comes down because they can buy it here cheaper and go up and sell it and make a profit up there.
Right, and it's getting, like I said, harder for us to get that dealer when you're just dealing with kind of like the runners on the street. It's not like in the past where it was, you know, open hand-to-hand transactions on the street corner. Now things are they're getting crafty and using multiple people, multiple locations. So it's difficult to. It takes a lot of time and effort to really get those dealers through the warrant process. That's what.
Last night we had I think it was last night, very good conversation on a different type of task force that is sort of what is your version or the police version of community policing, in working with people who have substance issues, and you give a very fine report with the detective about how we're reaching out and trying to get people who have addictions and substance abuse issues, similar to the conversation we had earlier this evening, the help they need. The help they may need is to get the drug dealer off the street.
Yeah, exactly. I know it's sometimes it's tough love, and that's one of the difficulties we have with these people who have addictions. Some programs work for them, some do it voluntarily, but sometimes it just needs to take some person need to be arrested and put in detox and forced to kind of go through the programs while incarcerated. So there's no one solution. Everyone has their own way of going through recovery. So it is.
And I am very, supportive of recovery and every effort we can do to point people in the direction of recovery, and that includes the police department participating in that, with one small exception. And my exception is very simple. The taxpayers of Holyoke foot the bill for a $12.5 million police department. And I think it's time we figure out how to get the drug dealer off the street. Yes, we should be helping the addicts. Yes, we should be helping the people who have the disease, because it's the drug dealers that are feeding off the people who have this disease. Mm-hmm. But if we can't take the drug dealer off the street, why are we paying $12.5 million a year? Why are we paying the salaries we are if we don't know how to work the system and get these people out of Holyoke? Zero tolerance is what the taxpayer wants. Zero tolerance is what they should expect, not excuses.
No, I understand that, and keep in mind we're in a different time.
Crime is crime. I don't have to keep anything in mind, with all due apologies to my good friend. Get them off the street.
Right, and we have legal processes and procedures to do that, and I just keep in mind the climate we're in now with police reform and videotaping and stuff. And if we start going in there, all it takes is one video and one lawsuit, and so much for that zero tolerance. So we're doing the best we can, and we continue to work with all the local and federal agencies to try and combat this problem. And that's pretty much all I can say on that.
Councilor Bacon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the point that I would just like to bring home is there are communities in which it is known, don't go there because they're not going to tolerate, run down whatever the list is. They're not going to tolerate you parking too long. They're not going to tolerate if you litter on the ground. They're not going to tolerate if you try to do drugs on their streets. But we could all list in the communities around us, which communities we know are known to be intolerant of safety violations, drug violations, etc. And I would just hope that in our community, we would take some of those best practices in the other communities and implement them, because they're doing something differently than we are, because we have this chronic problem that is persisting, and the other communities around us aren't that much different from us. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with you there. We have a completely different population from some of the surrounding communities that we have around us, and I think that's a driving force to some of the problems.
Well,
so we are different, and we can't kind of emulate a city that has a different population.
If I may, through the chair.
Absolutely.
So the reason I'm saying what I'm saying is because we just looked at statistics that show us that more than half of the people that are coming here and experiencing a drug overdose do not live here. So what is happening is they are coming here. We are a destination point for the drug users. And my suggestion is that we need to change our strategies that we are using to get a different result. And because these are not people who live here, they're people who are coming here. And so I think we just gotta think a little bit outside of the box. I hear you on the concerns of the people, the police that are on the ground being worried about having charges of overstepping and the like. On the other hand, if this is a problem coming into our city every day from the outside, and it appears it's well over half of the people that are doing that, it just seems like we need to rethink our strategies and take a new and different approach, and that we might be able to take some strategies from some other communities and try them. I just think, to keep doing the same thing over and over that hasn't worked, it's just sort of time to rethink the whole approach at some level. And so I would appreciate any efforts that can be done to accomplish that, because to Councilor McGivern's point, we are spending a huge amount of taxpayer money to try to accomplish these things and try to support the police department. And the citizens are struggling with this level of support. And so I think they're hoping for a different result. And so that would just be my hope also. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Yes, I understand your concerns and the citizens' concerns. And like I said, it's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight. Right now, we're in a process of trying to rebuild the trust within the community because of all the things that have happened throughout the country. So that's one of the steps, and that's one of the challenges that we have when we go to a shooting or a crime scene. We don't have any cooperation from the citizens, so it makes our job more difficult. So We can't force it out of them, so it's going to be a process, but I will pass on everyone's concerns to the chief and Captain Pratt and see if we can come up with some strategies to kind of address this drug problem that we're having here in the city.
Thank you, Sergeant Hurt.
Thank you.
Councilor Tom?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me all right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant Hart, for the report. I think it's vital, as my colleague stated, we definitely have an issue here and a problem, and with the numbers of more than half of the people that are coming into Holyoke from outside of Holyoke with the issues, we got to stop the bleed, more or less. They're coming in here, and we got to get rid of the dealers somehow, and maybe there is different strategies that we can look at as a community. Not just the police force, but the citizens. And I know a lot of police work depends on citizen involvement. And I know you have a difficult time with that at times. But I think we definitely have to look at the issue, what is a root cause, and trying to get that cause out of here so the people don't continue to come into our town and to utilize buying the drugs in different areas of our city, not just in the lower wards, but all throughout the city. There's a problem with drugs. So anything you can do to sort of get some kind of and I know you have the DEA and the gang task force, but whatever you can do as a local police force to sort of rethink what can we be doing better, I think is vital in this situation. So I appreciate any work you can do on that matter, Sergeant Hart. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Tom. And I'm gonna just make one or two comments, and I wholeheartedly agree, and I've said this. I mean, I'm a pretty mild-mannered in terms of punishment, but anybody selling heroin or any of those things with fentanyl and all those kind of things, I mean, to me, that's an attempted murder. So that's also part of our criminal state laws and federal laws. I mean, in terms of what we do. And clearly the other thing is, and again, I go back to buildings, because I know Sergeant Hart, and I know I've been on it for my 2 years since I've been back on. I mean, we got buildings that are taken over by gangs that are selling drugs, and unfortunately, because of that, people are afraid to cooperate with the police because of retaliation. So somehow we have to overcome that. I don't have the answer. I know we can keep trying to reach out and talk and try to recognize, and I guess the one thing I would try to tell families is think about your young kid. By not standing up and trying to get this problem resolved, you're putting your own young kid, male or female, doesn't matter, in danger, and try to deal with it from a family perspective. But yeah, I mean, you know, and I when you hear someone going to court and they're selling drugs, and they're selling hard drugs, I'm not talking selling marijuana or some other thing. They're selling, killing drugs, and yet they're back out in 6 months or whatever the case might be, and making the money again. So I mean that and that's not your fault. That's part of the whole system. So I mean, right. I appreciate all the input you've given us. I think the statistics kind of tell us that we do have the problem, and it's not in one section of the city. It's over, and we all need to figure out a way to keep working together and getting the community to assist and point out where the problems are, and then hopefully so we can avoid having people trafficking coming into Holyoke, because we're a trafficking center. So thank you, Sergeant Hurt.
Thank you.
Councilor McGee or Councilor McGovern, any other last thoughts?
I think this has been complied with. I think Sergeant Hart has given us what we've asked for.
Yep.
It's just the other issues that we've talked about that it's just going to take more time for us to try and come up with that type of plan to address it. But I think Sergeant Hart's given us what we've requested.
Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Motion has been made that the order has been complied with. Any last thoughts? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you, Sergeant Hart.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you're done with us now, Sergeant Hart.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Sergeant Hart. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to take item 10.
Item 10?
8.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought we were on 8.
I'm sorry. Item
That's
8.
right.
I'm sorry.
We don't have a 10.
Well, I'm multiplying.
It's not, well, it's 9 now, but yeah, just go to 8.
Okay. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Order is used by Councilor McGee. Order that the Public Safety Committee invite David Conti and the Water Commissioners to discuss and get an update on the water filtration system. So, Councilor McGee, and welcome.
Yeah,
welcome.
First, I want to thank Mr. Conti, and I see former counselor, friend, Councilor Jardine is here.
All right.
All right. due to time, I mean, it's 9:10, and I wasn't wanting to keep anyone late, so I'll keep it clear. I've got a few emails and phone calls, and I remember when Kevin was here, Dave came in just before the bond that we approved. I think it was for a 5-year project, not the one that we did with regards to the piping and the hydrants and stuff, but it was a few years back. And you said, these are some of the things I'm looking to do, but please understand with regards to the water filtration system. I think at the time we were talking about the fluorescent light. We were trying to do a bond to put in new fluorescent light and stuff. You said, always remember, council, that, and I'm not sure if it was a federal or state regulation, that we have to be up to a certain type of code in order to have the water filtration system be correct. And if we didn't, we'd have to fall back on that plan, which would cost many millions of dollars. And you've been great keeping us there, but now some people are coming back, asking me questions where do we stand? What's up with our water filtration? I said, you know what? Instead of me just getting a letter and reading it, bring in the expert, have you go through where we are, what we need to do, and where we stand. So that way the public has it, the knowledge, and it's been recorded, and we can always go back to it. So thank you for being here late, and I'll just turn it over to you. That's kind of the scope of what I was looking to do. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Conti?
Yes, Councilor, Chairman, just wanted to let you know that Commissioner Barrett and Commissioner Harbless were not able to attend the meeting. So they asked that I do provide you with the update that you're looking for. So the good news is Holyoke has once again received another waiver from filtration. We received that waiver from the state on June of 2020, extending our waiver again for another year, which, understanding that we never thought that we were going to be able to maintain this waiver as long as we have. We are now one of the last 2 communities that have a unfiltered water source in the Commonwealth. It's Holyoke and it's Quabbin. That's just a testament to how good of a quality of water the city of Holyoke has from the Manhattan Supply out in Southampton. Now, the issues that we have primarily from the source are attributed to seasonal conditions when we have reservoir turnover, and that typically happens only in the fall months of the year. And a corrective measure that we do when that does happen is we blend the water with the in-town reservoir, the McLean Reservoir, for the most part. And that, for the most part, addresses a lot of the quality issues. But a lot of the residents do observe a tint in their water. That will be corrected from filtration. But City of Holyoke continues to meet all state and federal regulations with regards to testing. Our water, for the most part, the state certifies as being safe to drink. And there was a time 5 years ago, if not a little longer, where with the LT2 rule, where the department wasn't in compliance. And at the time, the board weighed whether or not we should filter the water versus UV. And we went the route of UV, which is much more inexpensive means of meeting the new regulations. So it bought us some more time. Now, how much longer? I mean, this question has been asked many times, and we've been saying 5, 10 years, and it's going on now 25 years, where we have been able to defer filtration. And the reason being is the cost that it's going to be to the consumer. When you're talking filtration, you're talking $20 million. And that's relatively inexpensive considering that everything that has been built from 1996, including the UV, will be used in the filtration process. So everything will play a role in the future when we do filter. So that's good news also. The problem that a lot of consumers are experiencing is distribution problems. That is discoloration that they have. And the problem that we're trying to correct here is, instead of the people going on social media and complaining about the water, they should be contacting the water department, because 9 out of 10 times our personnel can go to these individuals and we can find a means or a method to correct that situation, typically either through flushing, or, you know, explanations as to why that was caused. Fires, shutdowns, water main breaks, all those different things have a tendency to disrupt the system. The last bond that the last 2 bonds that the city council approved, that the board had requested, will provide some improvement to the distribution system. We're looking at 34,000 feet of all new water main in the city of Holyoke, represents about 5% of the water system, should address some of these areas where we have experienced discoloration or, you know, water quality problems. So that's a good thing. That project is currently underway and it's being phased in under the next 3 years. So we're on top of that. There are new compounds, chemical compounds that we are going to be testing for. And I'm sure you must have heard they're called PFAS. And a lot of the water systems, all the water systems are experiencing this. Primarily groundwater sources are having the most difficulty with it, because these are what they call forever chemicals. And they're everywhere. They're in your clothing, they're in your carpeting, they're in the packaging of your food, and now they're in the drinking water supply. So the state has set some guidelines with regards to testing. Holyoke will begin the testing starting this April. And we will be testing quarterly unless there's a violation. And if there's a violation, then we will be testing monthly. Now, if we're able to remain under the limits set by the state, there's 6 compounds into these PFAS. There's 6 compounds. And as long as we maintain a combined total under 20 parts per trillion. Now they're testing at parts per trillion, not parts per billion anymore, parts per trillion. If we're able to maintain a level below that, then hopefully we can continue with maintaining our waiver. And the beauty of that is there's a lot of communities that have filtration in place that cannot treat these chemicals. Okay. And we're seeing a lot of communities that have filtration are spending millions of dollars updating their system. Now, we're fortunate that we've put this off, and the technology now that's available can treat these new compounds. So I think that when we move forward and we see how these chemicals, or what the levels of these chemicals are, that will dictate when filtration will take place in the city of Holyoke. Now, if we were mandated to filter right now, it would take 3 to 5 years for this process, the process to take place, for the facility to be constructed and to be operational. So it could be another 5 years, it could be another 10 years. We don't know yet, but the standards are getting much more difficult. It's much more, there's new compounds, there's new chemicals that are being identified in the water supply. And there's gonna come a point where our waiver is going to be pulled from the state, and we are going to be required to filter. And at that time, then a chemical processing will be selected that will be in the best interest of the city of Holyoke and its water supply. So, but as of right now, Holyoke's water is very, very good. If I was to hold up water at the source in comparison to a bottled water, you could not tell the difference. Again, the problem is in the distribution system. That's where, for the most part, that's where we're having the complaints, and that's where we're trying to address it through pipe replacement, through flushing, and through public awareness.
Councilor McGee?
I'm just taking notes, trying to catch up. No, that's kind of what we're needing to know as to where we are and you know, where we potentially are going. We keep getting a waiver. I've known about the waiver for many years. The question becomes is how close are we to the point where we're never going to have the waiver again? And then you said we got to then fast track to the 3 to 5 years to building the system. And I understand what you're trying to do. I just needed to get the information out to those who are asking it. So I'll turn over to anyone else who has questions on it.
Can I just ask a question, Dave? So is there any potential of beginning this without the, starting the process, but not necessarily having the $20 million already out there, where we're going to be, I'm assuming we're going to bond for 20 million if we have to. I mean, is there a way that you can do this year to year type thing?
Well, the waiver is up for review every year by the state, and the state comes in and conducts an inspection, and they look at our water quality. They look at all of our testing results. They look at the watershed, the steps that we're taking to protect the watershed from contamination. But as far as the cost, that's an unknown right now. And there's like I said, there's a number of different types of treatment processes that are out there, technologies that we would select based on what we have to treat for. So I think there's a lot of unknowns still.
Okay.
And I think when we start the testing this April, we'll have a better understanding as to, if we violate these contaminants, and if we do violate these contaminants, whether it's going to be carbon treatment, or if it's going to be ion treatment or membrane technology. I mean, that's something that will be determined by the engineers based on the issues with the water. But right now, I mean, we are not in a position, to consider filtration until these unknowns are determined. We still understand that we have two bonds that are going to result in an increase in water rates by as much as 12 cents. Now, right now, Holyoke has one of the lowest, if not the lowest, water rates in Western Mass. Mm-hmm. And even with the projected rate increases, we are still going to be competitive with larger communities like Springfield and Chicopee. So that's good news from our standpoint. We would like to try to defer filtration even further down the road, again, because we don't really know what that cost is going to be. But it could be upwards of $20 million. But like I said, we've been fortunate because of the UV. We've been able to push off filtration at the benefit to the consumers.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Tomlin?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, David, for coming down, and Commissioner Jordan, appreciate you being here tonight too. David, a great explanation of what's going on, because I think many of us councilors get calls or get emails about certain parts of the city that the water is slightly discolored, and I know you're trying to take care of that through different means. With the new project you got going down, I know down in South Holyoke, I know it's going to clear out some of the issues, but through other areas of the city, is it just through the Highlands or Elmwood or Oakdale? Is there things that you can do now other than the pipe changes, or having technicians come to people's houses if people have issues with their water?
Well, the board has authorized me to reinstitute the flushing program that we have avoided for a couple of years, and the board has asked me to take a more aggressive approach in flushing the system, and this should, for the most part, address most of the quality issues. Now, we did have a flushing program in the fall. We're going to be looking to set up another flushing program. The problem is with all the activity down in the lower wards and in the flats, with all the construction, there's just a lot of disturbance going on down there. Right. And there's just, because with all the shutdowns, it just raises havoc with water quality. So the flushing is not as effective down there, but in the Highlands and the West Heights area, high service area, the area around the mall, the area all around Northampton Street, there would be a tremendous benefit with the flushing program. Again, in addition to the flushing program, we do get calls, and anytime we get calls with regards to problems with discoloration on certain streets, our staff is out there flushing those lines. I mean, you'll see hydrants open, and that's just a means to provide people with clean water because of disturbances sometimes that we don't have control over. So we're trying to do everything we possibly can, but those are really the most effective means of providing the customer with clean water is the annual flushing program that the board is very, very, very much pursuing, and also the spot flushing. And again, anytime person or an individual has a problem, they should call the water department. We send our staff right out there. We test their water. We assure them that it's safe to drink. And then if flushing is necessary, we either do a slow flush or we do a much larger flush in the evening.
Yeah. Also, Dave, I know you send out probably every, I don't know if it's every quarter or half year, sort of a flyer to all the residents, water, users. If there's anything you can put in those, I know you have sort of like the scientific things, or the rates of the different chemicals in the water, but you put other things in there. But if you could put something in there to explain to people, why the reasoning why, the color, the water's discolored, and possibly also to let them know that they can call at any time to have a technician or a worker to come up to their house to help them out. I'd appreciate that.
Well, that was one of the requests from Commissioner Jourdain. He thought that this information should be expanded upon, and we should provide more information in those consumer confidence report so that the people know a little bit more than just water quality, a little bit more about the system, problems like you're expressing tonight. All that will be added in, and we should have a much more detailed report this coming year.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the work you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other councilors? Commissioner Jourdain, would you like to say anything?
Oh, just very briefly. First of all, we should continue to count our blessings that we have Dave Conti as the manager of the Holyoke Water Works. Cannot say enough. I've had for many years, obviously, like all of you, had an opportunity from afar to see his good work. And now on being on the commission, I get to see it up close. These guys really do a great job. They're very sensitive to these issues around customer concerns. On this issue about water filtration, I think, again, it's a compliment to Holyoke. DPH doesn't give us this waiver because they're giving some great favor to Holyoke. They do this only because we meet the highest standards without it. That's the only reason. It's not like there's some special deal for us. The thing that we should be thinking about is the fact that we're able to save a great deal of money, both on our ratepayers, and we can reallocate those dollars in other areas on the transmission lines, which are the things that we really do want to be very aggressive. I want to thank the City Council again for your leadership. You've continued to provide the Water Department with the resources, bonding, including the most recent one, to get very aggressive on replacing a lot of these transmission lines. Some certain very important fire protection projects that you guys have also outlined, things like Fairfield Avenue and Morgan Street, and these areas are going to be repaired and replaced once and for all. That needed that to be done. I also want to compliment the other commissioners, as well as Dave Conti, on thinking about innovative ways that we can do some of this work ourselves inside the water department without a great deal of public cost. David is even working hard now to replace a number of the lines on Chestnut Street so that all of Churchill really has great fire suppression protection for our residents. It's these type of things that the water department, on its very limited budget, is going out of its way to really do a great job. So I think the other nice side benefit about the flushing program that's very important, it obviously helps on these water quality issues, but the other issue is it helped us internally to take a great inventory of our hydrants that we were having problems with, so that if any of those things from a fire suppression perspective needed to be replaced, all of those hydrants were also tested as well. So those were replaced as needed. So there's a lot of great benefits to the flushing program. So again, very impressed with this department, and despite its Spartan budget and trying to keep the rates down, because we know, the changes that had to be made on sewer rates and otherwise, and taxes for that matter. At least there's one area right now where, like the G&E, you can catch a break somewhere. And but they're doing a ton of infrastructure improvements, and this is really going to benefit our residents for many generations to come.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I'm chiming in a little late. I'm still going back and forth between meetings. But I just wanted to speak on behalf of, as a ward counselor, to express my appreciation to Dave and the staff at the water department, because they have been very responsive when I've received calls from constituents when they have these questions. And so I've been able to be responsive to them. And so I think it's a credit to the department. And I would echo Kevin Jourdain's comments that talk about the stewardship of the department with the city resources, and also the quality in spite of the color, because I think that's an important educational piece that we need to help our water department with in the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there was actually one point I forgot to mention.
You're not allowed, no. I'm shutting you off now. No, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. One actual just side benefit, because there will, like David said, there will come a day when we're definitely going to have to do filtration. Yep. The standards will just get so great that, you know, it just have to happen. But by having a prolonged wait, we're going to not have to do this twice, potentially, right? Because we'll have the most modern technology. Those that had to filter 20 years ago are now going to be in a position that they've got to make all these improvements, very costly improvements to their system. So there's a lot of benefit by us waiting to having this done, because this technology is just changing so rapidly. I just wanted to get that point across.
Thank you. And if I could just ask one last question to David, and I know you've been doing a lot of work in South Holyoke, which I appreciate. Are you expecting that most of that work will be done by this summer? Do you know?
Are you talking about the flats? Or are you talking about in the South Holyoke area?
South Holyoke, primarily.
South Holyoke. Well, there's actually 3 projects going forward in the South Holyoke area. There's the
oh, we lost you.
the Jackson Street sewer separation project.
Okay.
There's the Mass Works. Now the Wally that just a couple of tie-ins that are sorry. A couple of
David, you may want to
spring,
restart. They lost some of you. Your original. You had frozen up there, Dave. You were making a lot of good points. You might want to just restart after the counselor's question about what we're doing in South Holyoke.
Okay. There's 3 projects that are running concurrently in the South Holyoke area. The CSO Jackson Street Sewer Separation Project that the city's doing. There's the Mass Works project, and then there's the Phase 1 water main work project. Now, the water main work project, for the most part, is complete. There's a couple of little additional services that need to be leave-out services that need to take place for the Mass Works project, but for the most part, almost all the water main work is completed. So you're going to be seeing, but I'm not sure actually what the schedule is under the CSO project. There still is some sewer separation work necessary, right, and there is still some work under the Mass Works project sidewalks. But I think you should see, and I wish Bob Parent was here because he could give you a better update on the status of those 2 projects. Our work should be finished this year. Whether or not those roads are going to get resurfaced and permanent pavement's going to be put down, I can't tell you. I don't know that as of yet.
Okay, well, that was one of the original things they had told me, that they thought probably this summer. So that's what I'm.
It could be now. As far as in the flats area, in the East White Street, North Bridge Street area that we're working, the water main work is taking place. All that water main work has been completed. The services have been transferred, and the resurfacing, the milling and resurfacing of those roads is going to take place this spring. We expect all that work to be done by June.
Good. Thank you very much. So Todd, are you okay?
No, this is perfect. This is I think what we needed, and hearing about the new flyer or information piece coming out, adding some of this stuff, I think is really going to get people back on the same page as to the information we got. So I can't thank you both enough for staying late and then answering some of our questions and getting this out to us, because this is what people are looking for. So I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, I thank you as well. So the motion is made that
it's complied.
Real quick, Mr.
Councilman Gibbon.
Yeah, I lost it. I can't put my hand up tonight because our administrative assistant made me a co-host to watch over you. But I just want to say thank you to David as always. I mean, it's an incredible, anytime to listen to you is just incredible. And I think the ratepayers and our constituents appreciate the opportunity to hear from you. And Commissioner Jordan, I know what you said tonight is so true, because as our president, you also made sure that the ratepayers and the residents of Holyoke understand that tonight's about distribution, but the water department is even more than that. You're the keepers of one of the biggest assets any community could have, and that's our reservoir system. And it's just incredible what you do with it. Kevin, I hope when COVID is done and we're near the end of it, we can open up that opportunity to give everybody a chance to see Taikometer again, because we have half the city council that's never seen it.
Oh,
that's
it's a gem. No, yeah, that's a great idea. Great idea. We'll get the ball warmed up.
Say that.
Okay,
but
so
it is an option. I think down the road we'd like to see again. Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Ed. And motion is made that the order's been complied with. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a
Thank
good
you.
rest of your evening. Don't stay out too late.
Okay, take care. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to take up item 9.
Take up item 9 from.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Order introduced by Councilor McGee. Order that the Public Safety Committee invite Jim Lavelle or represented by HDNE with regard to the Valley Heights Streets area in City Council. So I think we've got Jeff from the JD, and I think Jim Lavelle came. So we got both of them now. So Todd?
Yep. Thank you. We'll make this quick. I did get a couple calls and an email with regards to there was issues up there. I just got to get my notes here. That service on one side of the street was having trouble depending on the weather. The other side was good. Transformer was an issue. So then people were getting, whether it was calls or whatnot, that was unclear, about putting poles in on the front lawn. There were suggestions to run the wires underground, but that was too expensive. That was told to them. Running wires behind the house, cutting trees down, that was an option that was once again too expensive. So residents are showing concern that they don't want poles up in their front yard, and they want to know what is actually happening or going to happen with regards to this area. That's kind of the gist of why this was filed, because I was getting those questions.
Jim or Jeff?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just give you a high-level overview, and Jeff has been working on this with his team for many hours and can give you as many details as you're interested in. But from a high level, we have several backyard services, mainly throughout the Highlands. Valley Heights is one of those where, back in the late 40s, early 50s, when these backyard services were put in, there was no obstruction in the backyard. Now what we're faced with in just about all cases are trees that have grown and are basically covering the wires and poles. We've had people put in fences, sheds, pools. We have, primary high voltage wires running over people's pools and decks. So there's safety issues for the residents. There's safety issues for our people who can't even access these areas. And when we do have an outage there, it takes forever to get it back on. At Valley Heights, what we're seeing is there's been issues there because the assets in the backyards are at the end, they're over 70 years old and they're at the end of their useful life. So we have to make a change and invest in the service in that area. And for all the reasons I just mentioned, we developed a plan about 5 years ago to relocate all these backyard services in the Highlands to the front. Jeff can give you the details on cost, but to just put poles, there are 5 street lights in the street right now in the front of the houses. And we would be replacing those with poles and adding a few wood poles. So yes, we're adding poles to the street where there, in a couple cases have not been them. But to do it that way is, it's almost 5 times more expensive to put it underground. And we won't be able to do as many relocations if we try to underground everything. You just can't afford it. So in this case, we have 19 customers that would be impacted. Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 13 of them are fine with it and actually looking forward to it based on what we've heard because of the reliability issues. And, you know, if we have to put new poles in their backyards, we're gonna have to take down trees and, you know, in order to do things to code, they'll be more upset when they see what we have to do. So we're never gonna get 100% acceptance of this, but it's really a issue that has to be resolved. And I don't know, Jeff, if you want to add anything or if other counselors have questions.
Yeah, I mean, access particularly to Valley Heights, and maybe more so on the Taylor Street side than the River side, is nearly impossible to get access without having to move fences or do workarounds for our personnel or our contractors. And it's been, or tree trimmers. And whenever we have to get back there, or even Verizon for their stuff, you know, we'll end up repairing lawns, depending on what time of year we're there, or after storms, removing or cutting tree limbs down to get back there. There's really a lot of inaccessible access in that street. We are planning to upgrade that particular street in the surrounding area this summer. So this has actually we've been working on this for about 2 years now, starting in early 2019 to get in front of the customers to kind of see, you know, this is what we're thinking about doing, this is why, and trying to educate them and let them know, you know, why we're doing this to improve reliability. So it's been slow going, to say the least, because it's Verizon's ultimate responsibility to replace any poles on that street or in that area for that matter. That's also a time-consuming issue to push them to replace poles, no matter if they're 70 years old or not. But so another reason why we started early as well, in case we get to that point. Just to go over quickly, just some of the costs so you can kind of see how they escalate. To relocate the poles to a single pole line along the street is about $80,000. Once that's done, there's minimal maintenance that occurs afterwards. There's no trees. It's a clear line of sight. We don't have to be back there. Only 6 of the 19 services that are on the street need to be changed, which we would take care of. And if Verizon cooperates and gets out of the backyard with us and comes on to the street, we'd get reimbursed at least $25,000 worth of that with their cooperation. So by far, that's the most reliable and cost-effective solution that we have. Now, of course, there's other options that we looked at and that Councilor McGee had alluded to through customers. We can replace the current pole lines on both sides of the backyards for about $125,000. But under this scenario, it doesn't address the ongoing tree trimming costs that would continue about $10,000–$12,000 every 18 months or so, given our trimming cycle. So, but we still have to deal with the path of obstacles that are there. Not sure how easy it is to create paths to gain access to these backyards, if that's the case. So it's still subject to reliability concerns and extended outages just because where they're located and fairly heavily treed. And then if you want, another option is always, as Jim had said, about undergrounding everything. Now you're looking at about 4.5 times the cost of putting it on the street, about $360,000. So if you equate that to the 19 customers that would directly affect, you're about $19,000 per customer that it would cost to underground that, which is more not prudent for the overall rate and more than we would ever make on a residential customer in a lifetime. So, you know, there's other solutions, yes, but you know, there comes at a cost, and you solve some issues, but not all of them. So there's a lot that goes into it. So over these last 2 years, we had been working with the neighborhood on various solutions to see what would be best, what would work for them. And we are at this point to go forward with, you know, something along the street, ideally, being not the most prudent way to go.
And when are they looking to start all this work in the summer, you said?
Sometime in the summer, I would say at this point.
In the pole locations again, where there are already poles out there, or are you
So
adding
we have,
poles?
yeah, so we have five wood poles on the Taylor Street side. And then we have 4 wood poles on the river side. And we actually even have 1 wood pole that's as you come in off of Lincoln Street on the right-hand side, the river side. We actually have 1 pole along the street already. And we have 3 concrete streetlight poles that exist on the street already for just street lighting.
So Councilor McGee, what we're saying is the 3 concrete streetlight poles would be replaced by how many wood poles, Jeff?
So the 3 would be replaced with 4. The 3 concrete would be replaced with wood poles, and then we would add an additional 4. So it'd be 7. I'll say 7 from the S curve to the cul-de-sac in total.
Okay. So you're replacing 3 concrete street poles and adding in 7 total poles for everything. If I'm hearing that
replacing the
correct.
3 concrete and adding 4 additional wood, so 7 total.
So you're going from right now 3 concrete light poles. What will be there after the project complete are 7 wood poles that have street lights and the wires.
It could be an opportunity for the neighborhood if they want more street lighting. With the more poles there, you could add additional lights beyond the 3 that are there. That's another option between if the residents want that and if city is willing to pay for them. So that's another potential benefit.
In Verizon, you said has to move their poles from the back as well up front, and that's part of this, and that's going to help cut 25,000 off. That's
We're not sure what their intention is. They have a tendency to just leave everything where it is until it falls down. We're hoping that we can work with them so we can combine everyone on 1 pole line, but it's really up to them if they want to go on it or not.
But their poles and lines run in back of the houses currently. It's
Correct.
like yours.
Correct.
So you move your stuff out, they tell you no. They're still gonna have their lines in the back. And you guys
Correct.
are gonna move your stuff to the front.
So yes, so we would move our stuff to the front, and they would keep theirs to the back. Cable TV might come to the front with us too. I think they're in the back too. They have a tendency to work with us a little bit better than Verizon.
I mean, and I guess that's kind of one of the concerns that was brought up as well in the discussions was if you guys move everything out front, your argument is you don't have the access. It costs money. It costs more to redo the lines back there and then have access each and every year in the trimming. But then Verizon will just keep the same as well. So now residents have lines up front and in back if no one's on the same page for everything.
Yeah, so we will work with them as best as they can to do that, but we may need city assistance like we have had in the past, particularly as an example on Pleasant Street, where after the state did their work on Pleasant Street, I think it took Verizon maybe 3-4 years later before they moved their stuff underground that they installed during the state project. So, you know, help from the city council on that to almost force them to do that would be helpful and alleviate a situation like this, because it won't be the last, because they won't move. I don't know how many customers they have on those laterals. That's part of the problem. They see it, oh, we only have one customer on that line. You know, they'll let it ride, you know.
I guess because we're starting in the summer and this is kind of just looming out there where we can't really get good answers because Verizon's not being a good, you know, helper with us here. And, you know, I got residents calling me saying, well, this isn't just going to be fair to them. Now I got poles up front that I never had before, and I may still have poles in the back. You know, it almost seems as if knowing, and I'm not blaming you, that's why I'm trying to get more information here is, you know, Verizon just says we're not going to do anything. So who has to bear the burden is the homeowner, because they still have stuff in their backyard, and now they got stuff out in the front yard, which when I bought the house or had the house there, that wasn't there. That's one of the reasons why I bought it. Now
Right. Our hope and expectation, Counselor, in a plan that we have that Jeff has drafted involves, you know, working with the city council to put as much pressure on Verizon as we can, and we have had success in the past. So our expectation is the poles in the backyard that currently exist will be gone.
Well, I guess I appreciate that, and there's the help from the council, but I didn't know about it until they started contacting me. I didn't know anything about this. And if Verizon is a problem, it's the first time I'm hearing it tonight as Verizon possibly being a problem to this whole thing. But yet we need help from the council. So, you know, when were we going to get notice on that before the summer hit?
But we don't even have the plan finalized. So yes, we would, Jeff, have you even reached out to Verizon yet to determine whether they're, you know, in favor of this, whether they're going to ignore it or they need pressure?
Yeah, we've been on them for at least a year now to if they're going to replace the poles or come on the street with us. So presumably they have, it's in engineering. So we're trying to get the latest update on them. Which way are they going to go?
Yeah,
because they would actually have to set the poles in the street because it's their, you know, maintenance area. But if they don't go, then we set the poles. But we're trying to consolidate lines if we can. But
Jeff,
without a firm plan, that's why we haven't moved forward with anything definitive yet.
If my memory serves me correct, when it comes to poles, the G&E city owns half the poles and Verizon owns the other half when you go through the city. Is that
so we split ownership throughout the city, assuming we're both attached to the same pole.
Who
so
owns
it's broken
these
up.
poles in the backyard?
We do, and Verizon, but the city is split roughly in half as far as who maintains it, whose responsibility to replace poles and remove poles. In this section of the city, Verizon is.
If the G&E no longer is using these poles, you don't have to maintain them, correct?
Correct. So we give up our ownership of the poles. So essentially, by moving, you know, when we go out to the street, as an example, in this case, we abandon our rights and our ownership to Verizon, and it's their responsibility after.
Backyard poles have an easement?
Not a formal one, as far as I understand.
So if there's no easement, what right does Verizon get to keep poles there?
Yeah, I mean, they don't, other than, you know, they've been there in some cases 70, 80 years.
I think it's just a matter of the homeowners and the city saying, take them down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not a lawyer, you know? Counselor McGee, what do you think?
They might have an easement, not so much an easement, but a right of way because they were there prior to the houses, or when they were doing the deed, an easement was granted within it. So I mean, that's what has to be checked, but that's not even for us to check. The real issue is we, as the HG&E, is looking to remove their poles because of valid reasons that were brought up. I'm not knocking it, but they're looking to move stuff, which then, you know, if you look at the argument, we're going to take our rights away from the poles and make our own poles, which then leaves the same problem for the resident. I got poles in the back with lines that may or may have good access because of how things developed over time. So Verizon turns around and does nothing. So now they got that issue, but HG&E is pulled out and they moved their poles up front to give them better access, which once again, valid reasons. But as a homeowner, now I got two problems. I got new poles up front that are blocking my site, of which I didn't buy the house to have that up there. It's a valid argument on their side. And two, I still got the poles in back that because of, you know, not a good neighbor being Verizon, which they haven't been good to us either as a council. I think Councilor Leahy and I have pointed out many times. They can just go on their merry way and leave it the way it is. So for us, I'm just trying to be proactive for the residents to say, hey, look, if you guys are being, you know, wanting to have these poles to make it more accessible to you, to cover outages and all, once again, all valid reasons, I think the residents deserve the right to have things answered to them prior to this whole thing going out, which is, where does Verizon stand? How is it going to go? Are the poles up down there going to come out and they're going to go up front? How's the spacing going to go to help residents be more at ease? I understand the cost. I get the cost. But, I mean, that's, you know, I'm playing catch up on something that was brought to my attention. And I get it. You're still in the development. But once again, summer is when we're looking to do this. Summer, you know, not too far off.
Right. All right. So our plan right now is to, you know, obviously follow up with them and see where they stand at this point.
Yeah, I'd like a follow up for the council as to, you know, what plan you have. I know you said summer. What time in summer?
Mm-hmm.
I want answers about Verizon. You know, you say you want help from the council. What help are you asking for? What pressure are you asking for? I mean, this is the first time I've heard of it. So, I mean, I'm a little more, you know, communication would be nice, simply because I have residents who are saying, you know, they're not happy, and my job is to make sure they are happy. So I need answers.
Okay.
We're happy to get them for you.
Thank you. Todd, are you all set?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table it until I get that information.
Okay.
I just want to add one thing, and I understand what Councilor McGee is coming from, but the incentive to Verizon is, if the G&E is going to go in and remove wires, now's the time to remove those poles in the backyard. If the G&E does, if you do your job and you leave, I'm taking it that Verizon now has 100% maintenance on the poles, and if they ever want to get out of there, they're going to have to remove them on their own. So it makes a lot more sense to make it a joint project if I was Verizon and recognize that. And I think that needs to be communicated.
Yeah, ideally, that would be the way it should work.
It should no doubt work that way, and we attempt that way. And I don't know how to explain other than it falls on deaf ears with them, and it's very frustrating on our end. So it's a continuing progression and trying to get them to cooperate, almost like Comcast does. I will say, you know, they're a lot easier to work with. Granted, they're only renters, but they get what we're trying to do, and but Verizon, and we're not the only community. It's everywhere. So,
Jeff, I appreciate you being here all meeting, and we're gonna end up tabling this, and we certainly want you to report back to us as soon as you possibly can, so that we can pick this up and get final information as much as we can.
Okay.
Todd, that's what you want, right, Todd?
Yep, please, and thank you for being here. I do appreciate it.
Motion
Thank you,
is made.
gentlemen. Motion to table.
Seconded to table.
Motion to
All in
table.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Before we go, I just want to, Jennifer, I don't know who you are, but I know you were here for the entire meeting, and I just want to thank you for being with us for the entire meeting. And if you ever want to say anything, just feel free to raise your hand. I saw you here, I think, the last 2 meetings, so I just want to thank you for being here. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.